Ladies and gentlemen, our referee has called a stop to this contest, declaring the winner by knockout and new MMA show! Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another exciting round of and new MMA show. I'm your host, Michael Hansen, and I do all kinds of glorious things with microphones because I am a ring announcer and cage announcer, and I'm joined this week, as I always am, by my two co-hosts, both of whom bring MMA punditry to new heights as they stretch and get ready for these next 2 hours of MMA deep dive talk. Introducing to you first, from New York, he is Mark Priaulx. Mark, what's up?
What's up, boys? And what's up, people and listeners and viewers? We were all just talking before we hit play here about how long our days have been and how tired we are. So we are going to try to push through this thing for you guys. I didn't even go home from working today, so I don't have my normal paraphernalia behind me because I just fucking worked until 10 o'clock at night. So, good times.
Hey, you still have
Ready
that
to
fan
go.
art. You still have that fan art. That's what counts.
That stays in the office. The autographs and
Does
shit
it really?
I bring home because I don't want to leave them in the office, so I just bring them back for the
sure.
show. One day I'm going to do this show from my home, but we're not at that day yet.
One day we're going to do the show from a studio if we ever get Omar back to New York. I don't know. Or myself. Speaking of Omar, introducing now from Florida, the Sunshine State, he is the Tampa Tornado, Omar Artola. What's up, buddy?
Oh, what's going on? We're going to end up having a poll for what sticks here. Yeah, dude. I actually just got a new standing desk and stuff, but I have not set it up.
Sweet.
So that'll happen at
That's
some
what's in the
point.
box.
That's what's in the box.
Very nice. Very nice. Exciting news. My younger son just started in daycare. So that's happening. He's still a baby. And it has to happen because we moved away from family. And that's what it is. That's what you got to do, man.
How did he do?
He's so far this week, he's doing okay. He actually seems to be doing okay. I mean, they could just be lying to us. He could be screaming for the entire time. But
could be.
You know, there's an app that they send us updates and stuff throughout the day and how he's doing. And he seems to be doing fine. He's a baby. He's not going to remember it. So anyway, we have a lot to get through, guys. Enough of this chit-chat. Let's quickly run down this episode. We're going to talk about all these fights from this past weekend, UFC Fight Night, Luque versus RDA. We're going to throw whoever's the winner of the main event on our marquee, recap a bunch of the big fights from this past event, and throw a bunch of these fights into our lightning round. We're going to find out who rose and fell in Mark's very own rankings system that he meticulously maintains. We're going to recap also some of the fights from Bellator 298 from this past weekend. We're going to find out what's going on in the world of MMA outside of the cage with our segment Inside the MMA Sphere with Omar Artola. And then we're going to look ahead to this weekend. MMA action in both PFL and UFC with PFL 8, another installment of the 2023 PFL playoffs. This event will be headlined. Is this heavyweights and which two weight classes?
Heavyweights and women's featherweights.
Women's featherweights, that's right. Fantastic. Larissa Pacheco will be on this card, which is very exciting. As well as the Crochet Boss, which I'm looking forward to. And also this weekend, a huge pay-per-view. I just feel like we just had a big UFC pay-per-view, but now we're getting another one with UFC 292 Sterling versus O'Malley. Headlined, of course, by the Funk Master himself, Aljamain Sterling, and Sugar Sean O'Malley finally stepping up into that spotlight of a bantamweight title shot. Oh my goodness. And this is a very, very nice pay-per-view card. So guys, before we get into any of this fight talk, let us first thank our audience. If you guys are watching this right now on YouTube, hey, thank you so much. We appreciate each and every single one of you guys who are watching this, and especially those who interact with our videos. If you don't mind, click that thumbs up. It gives us a thumbs up on this video that you're watching right now. It helps our channel out so much with all the algorithm things. If you haven't done so yet, if you've been watching a few of our videos and you like the MMA chat and analysis and breakdowns and picks and recaps, please subscribe to our channel so that you never miss a video. And of course, we love the comments down below. If you guys like any of our takes, let us know. Give us a thumbs up down in the comments. If you don't like any of our takes, if you disagree with any of our takes, we want to hear yours down in the comments below. We, and by we I mean mostly Mark and sometimes Omar, pretty much respond to every single comment down below. We love that thoughtful MMA conversation. That is why we started this podcast and this YouTube channel, is because the three of us have been maintaining an ongoing MMA conversation for like the past 12 years. So, and we said, let's just start recording it and putting it on the internet. So we love that thoughtful dialogue. Please keep it classy as always. And hey, if you want audio only, we got you there. Of course, find us wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, we're on social media, so it's official. You can find us on all the socials that are relevant. We are at @&_MMA show in all the places. All right, enough. Let's get into this episode. This week, gentlemen, the name on the marquee has got to be Vicente Luque, who this past weekend at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada, defeated the living legend Rafael dos Anjos by a unanimous decision. The scorecards read 49-46, 48-47, and 48-47. All three judges for Luque. Mark, let's start with you. Give us your take and your impression of this signature win by Vicente Luque over the always tough, always dangerous legend in RDA.
So first off, I am a little bit pissed to say that I did not get a chance to rewatch this fight. I always try to rewatch these fights that come down to scoring for you guys, but as we were mentioning in the beginning of this show, we've had a bit of a crazy week. I've had a bit of a crazy week, I should say, and I couldn't find the time, and I really wanted to, because I do think this fight was interesting to score, even though it felt like a Luque win, because I think rounds 2 and 4 were certainly Vicente Luque rounds. And live, I did think he won the fight, but I really thought all three of 1, 3, 5 were close enough that I was like, man, I kind of want to watch that again and just see how I would score them. And then I see on MMA Decisions, there's a good chunk of people scoring these rounds for RDA, so I'm really curious to do a rewatch, and I do apologize to those listening that I didn't get to do that. But with all that said, this really was an interesting fight. First off, RDA just always hangs. Like, even when he's up at welterweight against killers like Luque, like, not saying he can't be finished, because obviously we've seen, Fiziev do that. Eddie did it back in the day. Granted, he rarely does get finished. But no one is ever outclassing RDA. He hangs with anyone and everyone. He's just so well-rounded. He's so comfortable in the fight. And he showed that again here against a bigger, stronger, more powerful guy in Luque. And as for Luque, to come back and fight the way that he did when he wasn't sure if he was ever even going to fight again, thanks to a brain hemorrhage, is unbelievable. It was probably the best defensive wrestling and defensive grappling that we've ever seen from Vicente Luque, and offensive wrestling and grappling, for that matter. I don't know why I'm only saying defensive, because there was quite a bit of offense as well in that area. The arm drag that DC was raving about in round 3 was a real shining moment for Luque. I loved that too. You could point to the Chiesa fight for him, where he was really slick in the grappling too, but that was a lot quicker. This was like a true sustained effort out of him for 25 minutes, committed to wrestling and grappling. And I think it was a statement from him about the way that he's working to improve his own game and become a more well-rounded threat. Like, he got beat by Bilal in that area. Against Jeff Neal, he was losing on the feet. He didn't really have a way to change the fight. So I think he consciously tried to work on that part of his game and tried to lean on it here. And he did well. So, as I said, I do want to rewatch this. I still think I will. Maybe I'll have a comment as we open the show next week. But regardless of that, this was a strong performance from Vicente Luque. a big way for him to bounce back after a couple losses. And it may not have been the game plan we expected, but he basically beat RDA at his own game, which says a lot.
Okay, Omar, let's bring you in here. Give us your take of, what were the key to victories for Vicente Luque in getting this win over RDA?
Well, I mean, RDA is the type of guy that has that championship experience, and I think the thing that I love about RDA the most is how he can kind of weather the odds, right? Like Vicente Luque looked bigger than RDA, almost not thicker, but bigger, just generally. And I think you could see the size played a certain factor when it came to the grappling in that fight as well. But RDA knows how to fight, right? Like he knows how to put things together. He knows the fight IQ that RDA has in order to try to win rounds, I think, is pretty high. But Luque was no slouch, man. He's just as good on the ground, I think, he is on the feet, and he is a killer on the feet. RDA is just really good, and I think that if RDA went back down to 155, I think he would be able to do more damage than he would at 170. And that's saying a lot because he's still very good at 170 pounds. I was impressed by the fight overall. I also think that round 3 for me was the toss-up round. I think 2 and 4 go to Luque, and I thought 1 and 5 went to RDA. But it was a close fight. It was a lot closer than I thought it was going to be honest. I thought the size and the power difference from Luque would have played a lot more into the result. But RDA did work, man. It was a great performance on both of them.
It was interesting to see RDA kind of get RDA'd. I mean, down at lightweight, I feel like this is the kind of fight that RDA would usually kind of execute on his opponents at 155. But now, being only 5'8" at 170 pounds seems to be a bit of a disadvantage for RDA, especially at this later stage in his career against a guy in Vicente Luque, who is officially listed at, I believe, 5'10" or 5'11". Yeah, to your point, he just seemed like the bigger guy. It's weird to see somebody who seems stronger than RDA in the ring. Because, again, especially at lightweight, he always seemed like he had the strength advantage. Like he would just kind of dad dudes in the cage. And it seems to be that's what he tasted this past weekend. So let's talk about Vicente Luque now, where he could go from here. He's back in the win column after dropping 2 fights in a row to Belal Muhammad and Jeff Neal. His record now stands at 22-9, and it needs to be mentioned that he is 2-0. He's batting 1,000 when facing former UFC champions, now with wins over both Tyron Woodley and RDA. So, Mark, what do you think is next for Vicente Luque? Put on your UFC matchmaker hat. Who would you match him up with next?
I don't know where exactly to go with him, to be honest. There's no one above him currently that really makes a ton of sense, other than the man who's only one spot above, which is Sean Brady. Also, it's so dumb that he's ranked above Vicente Luque, but I digress, and I won't go down that rabbit hole right now. So, yeah, maybe you can go Luque versus Brady. I don't know when Brady's back exactly. Either that, or maybe you end up using Luque as the next step up for that newly booked Kevin Holland versus Jack Della Maddalena fight.
Okay, like it. Omar, any other ideas?
Are you talking about like him getting the winner of Jack Della Maddalena, Kevin Holland, or the loser? Or
oh, did I leave it? I thought I said the next step up for the winner of that fight. Did I not say that? My bad.
Yeah, maybe I didn't understand it. Yeah, I mean what was the first one that you said there? The Sean Brady one was the one that I had in my head, and I don't know what's going on with Sean Brady. I'm not really sure what his update is, but there's just so much stagnation in the welterweight division right now, and I think eventually things will start to clear up, especially once all these fights end up happening before the end of the year. But as of right now, Sean Brady's just kind of the one that makes sense. I doubt that'll be the case in the next four months or so.
Also, I stand corrected. He did lose against Leon Edwards, but I did say, to be fair, I did say former champions, and Leon Edwards was not a champion when he lost to Leon Edwards, so I'm still right.
That's correct.
Let's talk about RDA. RDA, he's a welterweight now. He's probably among the smallest welterweights in the division. He's also 38 years old. And his record stands at 32-15. He's back in the loss column. He's been sort of pinballing back and forth between loss, win, loss, win, loss. Omar, let me start with you this time. Do you see RDA sticking around 170? And if so, who would you want to see him fight next?
Honestly, I'm not really sure what his motivation is at this point, because if he's trying to go for a belt, I don't see that happening anytime soon. So if he's here for a paycheck and just to kind of keep active and keep looking good and, kind of whatever happens, I would think a fight between him and Randy Brown could be very interesting at this point in both of their careers. I would be very down for that.
Like it. Mark, any other bright ideas for RDA?
So he did say when he came back up to welterweight that he was realizing he was getting older and that maybe he was not going to be a champion again, and that he just wanted to not be cutting the weight and kind of have funner type fights. So he did seem to accept that. So I think he probably stays up at welterweight. I don't see why he would go back down. So yeah, he's hard too, because I really wanted to find another veteran to be put these two near legendary guys across the cage from each other. But there's no one that really fits that bill at welterweight that he should be fighting right now. So instead, I was just thinking maybe now he's the one that gets Michel Pereira, since the Wonder Boy fight fell apart, or even a Li Jing Liang. I think he's gonna kind of just be this guy now where he fights guys like Pereira or the Leech who are trying to break through, and they got to show they can beat an RDA.
Wow, I feel like Pereira would just tower over him, man.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, Luque looked bigger, but Pereira's is Pereira's 6'2"? Michel Pereira?
No, I don't think he's that tall.
You don't think he's 6'2"? He seems like such a giant at welterweight.
He's around there.
I mean, as of late,
6'1",
he can't even make welterweight lately. So my man's middleweight. Yeah, the last wins for RDA were Brian Barberena at welterweight. He submitted him, and then Hanata Moicano, which was a catchweight I'm seeing at 160, which makes me think, is RDA one of those guys who will go down as could have been a fantastic 165er?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, he got screwed for sure.
Yep.
And for that matter, so did Kevin Lee. I think Kevin Lee would have been a great 165 pounder.
Totally.
Yep.
Totally.
He's one of the poster boys for that division.
For sure.
Division.
Yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to say about either of these two Brasileiros before we move on?
No, sir.
Okay. In the co-main event. Oh, no. We're talking about. Yeah, let's talk about the co-main. Co-main event in the featherweight division. Excuse me. I was just excited to talk about my man Khalil Rountree. I jumped the gun. Let's talk about the co-main featherweight division. Cub Swanson defeats Hakeem Dawodu by a unanimous decision, 29-28 on all three of the judges' scorecards. Omar, give us your take at the fight and the keys to victory for Mr. Cub Swanson.
So, I caught live the end of this fight. I think I caught the end of round 2 and then round 3. And for round 3, I thought Cub Swanson won round 3, personally. So I was like, Cub Swanson's going to win this fight. He wins the fight, and I was like, all right, cool. And people apparently had tons of issues. So I went back and I watched the fight. And I'm not really on board that this is a robbery, in my opinion. Yeah. I think it was a close fight. And partially, I think that's the problem, right? Is that there was a lot of dead time in that fight. There was a lot of waiting, a lot of sort of sizing them up, but for an extended period of time. And this kind of happened throughout the entire fight. And Hakeem Dawodu kind of relied on a lot of his counters and things like that. But, Cub Swanson looked like the more active fighter. There was a lot of things that were in play there that I really thought I could see why a judge would potentially give him this round. At no point, and I think that this, for me, considering the situation, I actually put more of the onus on Hakeem Dawodu. I think he had a lot more responsibility considering how the momentum of that fight was going to push the pace a little bit, to push the aggression, to sort of make sure that he swung that momentum in his favor, because a lot of that fight was a pendulum going back and forth. between different sequences that were happening, different people that were getting better positions at one another, different shots that were landing between one another. And it's all well and good where we can look back and look at the stats and things like that, but the way that fight played out, it was a very difficult fight to score. And I think Hakeem Dawodu didn't do himself any favors fighting the fight the way that he did. And to be fair, neither did Cub Swanson, because Cub Swanson didn't really fight that fight very smart. He didn't really put everything together as far as his takedowns were concerned. You saw how quick he was able to get that takedown, I think, in round 3, but he never utilized it throughout the entire fight. And his striking, as loose as it is and how good he can be, didn't really seem very efficient. Didn't really seem like he had found a comfort in there against Hakeem Dawodu. I think he got countered a lot throughout that fight, and I think it just threw him off. And I think he kind of bum rushed his way in, hoping for the best. But it was a good fight that I think both guys had opportunities to be better and take control of that fight 100% without people having to wonder who won this round, who won that round. But
Mark, oh, sorry, you're not done.
Yo, you're good.
Mark, what do you think?
I'm happy to hear Omar say that he didn't think it was a robbery, because I didn't think so either. Firstly, I'm 0% surprised that Hakeem Dawodu finds himself in this situation, because as I said last week, he always finds a way to make his fights closer than they should be. And you could say the same thing here. He was clearly, from jump, the much faster man, and he couldn't make it mean enough to win a clear decision. And as for the decision, I really don't have a big issue with it. I think it comes down to round 1, and I think that round was basically a toss-up. On the rewatch, I did say, all right, maybe Hakeem just edged it, but if you scored that for Cub, especially live without the ability to rewatch it like I had, I really cannot argue with you at all. And then the second, Dawodu took pretty clearly. He did some nice work in the clinch. Granted, Cub ended it with that really nice flurry late, but I think it was still Hakeem's round. And then Cub took the third, to give himself a shot on the cards, not knowing which way round 1 went, and he got rewarded for it. So to me, it was just a close fight with no clear winner. I think the story was that Cub's experience in the fire paid off, in that he was comfortable in the exchanges and able to use his odd timing to create openings for himself to score. And unfortunately, on the other side, that the Hakeem narrative continues, at least somewhat, in that he fails to pull away in fights where it feels like he could have pulled away. So it goes Cubs' way this time, and the man is still chugging along.
So Cub Swanson is back in the win column after that nasty leg kick TKO against Jonathan Martinez back in last October. Back in the win column. I mean, I feel like Cub Swanson doesn't have much to prove at this point in his career. He is 39 years old. He has fought a who's who at bantamweight and featherweight. And but like RDA, he's kind of been ping-ponging back and forth between losses and wins lately, so I don't see a title run in his future. But Mark, give me the idea of who do you think he should match up with next?
Yeah, I'm just trying to think of what is a fun fight for Cub at this point in time, and I'm actually going to undo one of the fights that I suggested last week. I had said then that I thought a good next opponent for Diego Lopez would have been Billy Quarantillo, but I think I got to find something else for Lopez to do, because as I thought about this one, I was like, man, Cub Swanson fighting Billy Quarantillo would be really, really fun. So that's where I'm going to go.
Omar, what about you?
Honestly, I kind of like the Billy Quarantillo pick.
That's a great pick.
I don't really see how you can do something other than that, considering it's out there in the air now.
Cub Swanson's his longest winning streak in the UFC was 6 wins in a row. He at one point did have a 4-fight losing skid where he lost to Brian Ortega, Frankie, Renato Moicano, and Shane Burgos. But now he's back to the win column. Yeah, man.
I think I don't remember that happening.
Let's talk quickly about Hakeem Dawodu. Now, the first time in his professional career where he has lost back-to-back fights. Omar, what would you do next with Dawodu if you were the matchmaker?
Let's kick it over to Mark first, actually, because I don't have this page up.
Okay.
I scanned looking for someone who I feel like would is so crazy that they would force Hakeem Dawodu to have to open up. And for that reason, I am going to go with the wild man that is Joe Anderson Brito.
Okay.
Okay.
That's a great pick.
I would say let's give him Damon Jackson. Damon Jackson's probably another one of those guys where he's not going to have the opportunity to just sit there and wait. Damon Jackson's going to be coming for his throat for 3 rounds. So give him Damon Jackson.
What I love about that Brito pick is that that is Mark showing such a high level of MMA knowledge that he's plays with the dials like a wine sommelier. That he knows like what kind of opponent will bring out what flavors of Hakeem Dawodu. Well done, well done.
Thank you.
That's why you tune into this shit, people.
I appreciate that compliment.
That's why you tune into this shit. God damn it. By the way, looking at Hakeem Dawodu's record, he has a win in what was his 3rd pro bout over one Mike Malott. He fought Mike Malott at World Series of Fighting 14, what is now PFL, in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Mike Malott fought at 145 pounds in the beginning of his career.
Wow.
And
or was it at 155?
It might have been lightweight. I think it was featherweight.
Wow.
Yeah, Mike Malott is a big guy. That's crazy.
It was at featherweight. You're right. Wow.
And Hakeem Dawodu finished him. He TKO'd him.
Yeah. Dude, Hakeem Dawodu is good. Like, why am I blanking? He beat Julio Arce, who I rate. He beat Zubair Tukhugov, who's now out of the UFC. But he's a solid fighter. Like, the dude has skills. He's just, like, he can't get himself up another level when, to the eye test, he should be up another level.
Yeah. All right, let's move on. UFC Fight Night at the UFC Apex in Las Vegas. In the light heavyweight division, Khalil Rountree Jr.
Fuck yeah.
Says to Chris Daukaus. Says, sorry, buddy, have to spoil your light heavyweight debut. Khalil Rountree scores the TKO victory over Chris Daukaus at 2 minutes and 40 seconds of the very first round. Just great stuff from Khalil Rountree. Mark, let's start with you this time. Give us your take of how this fight played out and how it ultimately finished with Khalil Rountree getting his hand raised.
Finally, Khalil is rolling, man. And we all always felt like he had this in him to become this guy who can kind of just mow people down and put a run together. And he always found, ways to slip up, lose to the Marcin Pracnios of the world, which you think about and you're like, how did he even manage that? But he's finally putting it together, man. This is the best form we've seen from Khalil. He's won 4 in a row now. Everything really looks sharp. And I don't know that he's reached the level of being like a true title contender. I'm not sure we've made it that far, but I think we're probably going to get a real good gauge of that in like his next fight now, whoever it may be, because he's hitting like that top 10 matchup type level, and he is really looking fantastic. And he was great here. He was poised, he was patient, and Daukaus still did look pretty fast. His speed translated even down at 205. He landed a few clean rights on Khalil. We even saw him look to wrestle, which was interesting. But Khalil defended the takedown well. He took the shots well. He didn't rush anything, and he just waited for his spot, and he found it. He led with a big straight left as he stepped back into range. Daukaus got caught flush, and then Khalil was throwing some angry-looking shots in the follow-up on the ground. But a great finish for Khalil and a big win.
Omar, you're a Muay Thai guy. Khalil Rountree is a Muay Thai guy. I mean, my man moved to Thailand to like gain a huge proficiency in the art of 8 limbs, and it shows. Although it's not like he used some crazy Muay Thai technique. I think he just landed like a clean left straight on Chris Daukaus, which sat him down, and then he ultimately finished the fight with violence on the ground. But give us your take on some of the techniques that Khalil Rountree was employing in this win.
Yeah, it's actually a lot deeper than that, to be honest, man. He was setting a lot of that up for a while. He's such a fucking strong dude. Like, there are not a ton of guys who can get away with the stuff that he does the way that he does it. So if you're watching that fight, you'll notice that he's like aggressively smashing this dude's hand out of the way, right?
Yeah, what was that about?
So a lot of times you can do that. That is a technique in Muay Thai because it gets the hand out of the way, and you can follow up with a cross. You can follow up with a lot of different things. But more than that, I think at this point, Khalil was really programming Daukaus at that point, right? Programming him to respond to the left hand, programming to respond to, you need to do something with this side when I come for it, because otherwise I'm going to knock you, I'm going to punch you, whatever. And we had gotten to a point after a few exchanges that he ended up faking the actual hand and coming over the top with the left hand behind it. And it was a really beautiful combination all in all, and especially the way that he was able to set it up slowly. He still took a few shots throughout that fight as well. I don't think anything landed super, super clean against Khalil Rountree, but that dude is fucking terrifying. I'm going to tell you right now, that dude is absolutely terrifying. There is something about his, and a lot of Muay Thai guys have this, which is why I think wrestlers die for a fight with a Muay Thai guy, because Muay Thai guys have their legs like square and are just stomping forward. I'm just coming forward, and you're not going to do anything about it. And when you try to, I'm going to punch you in the throat, and I'm going to keep coming forward. And, you know, for a wrestler, they're going to dive under. They're going to try to time that. They're going to go under and try to go for a takedown and stuff like that. But for guys like Daukaus, who might not be comfortable doing that, who think that they have the striking to stand up to, you know, to a guy who is that comfortable using that, you know, those types of techniques, it's a rough day for that boy. And it definitely was.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you're making me think of that clip that made the round somewhat recently of Paddy Pimblett talking about Muay Thai and how pure Muay Thai really is not seen in much in MMA, because it's just, you go up against any wrestler and the stance is just not made for MMA. And the minute you go up against somebody, not even a pure wrestler, but just, you know, anybody who knows how to wrestle in MMA, your legs are too, what did he say? You're too upright. Your legs are too close together.
Yeah.
You're just begging to be taken down.
Yeah. Cause the whole thing is, and this would be like any kind of tackle, right? Even if you're talking about football or anything like that, the main objective really is to get your hands either behind the knees or at the very minimum under the butt, and then kind of pull in or, you know, toss up, whatever the hell you want to do. But the idea is to break that center of gravity, have that
right
above the area where you're grabbing onto. And with Muay Thai, in traditional Muay Thai, the kicks can't come from that far back because it telegraphs. And so you're gonna show exactly what you're doing if your kicks are coming from too far back, if your stance is too wide. Not to mention, in Muay Thai, there are leg kicks galore. And not to say that there aren't in MMA, but leg kicks don't happen nearly as often in MMA as they do in Muay Thai. A leg kick is almost used just as frequently as a jab is used when it comes to Muay Thai. So leg placement is generally very square, usually under the hips, maybe shifted off just a little bit. Front of the weight is generally all on the ball of your foot. So there's not a lot of heel action. There's not a lot of complete weight put down on the feet most of the time. Generally with leg kicks a little bit, generally with shovel hooks to the body and body shots in general. But overall, the leg placement is like candy to a baby for a wrestler. If you can get a knee off fast enough when a wrestler shoots in on you, God bless you. Other than that, you're probably going to be screwed.
For sure. For sure. Yeah, what strikes me about Khalil Rountree is, and this is just his Muay Thai, I think, prowess, is his calm in a fight against other light heavyweights, against other big dudes, and he's just so calm against other killers. I wonder if his like scary strength and scary power partly comes from when he was very overweight at one point in his life.
Yeah, I think so.
He has that like
probably fair.
That like heavy guy, like obese guy strength. You know what I mean? Yep. I don't want to say anything too insensitive to people out there who are listening, but
well, whatever he did, he looks like a fucking specimen now. Cause
he is, bro.
He's jacked to hell.
I mean, sometimes heavy dudes can be like stupid strong because they're basically carrying around like a bodysuit 24/7.
Yeah. And
they actually have like a ton of muscle under there.
The technique though it's a night and day difference when he went, like you could mark on the calendar based on his performances when that dude went to Thailand, because it was a night and day difference.
Yeah.
And he's literally just getting better. like not as a critique, but he looks so tense and so like tightened up when he fights. That's not generally like my, like I like to be a lot looser when I move so that I'm just not using or expending as much energy, because that shit will wear on you, just kind of having your hands up and just moving around, especially if you're that tight. And like if you look at Rountree, he's like the man took like 2 shots of pre-workout. Like he's in it. In it. I would love to see him be a little bit more loosey-goosey. That way, you know, especially if he's talking about having a 5-round fight and stuff like that, I doubt he's going to have that kind of like tension for 5 rounds.
Same exact thing. That's funny. It didn't hit me until you just mentioned the 5 rounds. But when he said the 5 rounds, my brain went exactly to, man, he can't be squeezing everything for 5 rounds or he's not going to make it. That's funny.
Yeah. Yeah, dude. And I can tell you from firsthand experience that it will gas you, and it'll gas you a lot quicker than 5 rounds for sure. So that would be like my one little like tidbit about the fantastic performance that Khalil Rountree had. I don't want to take anything away from him because he was absolutely fantastic. But that's just one thing I took away from it, that hopefully he gets feedback on and figures that out, especially before he gets put on a main card or a main event or something along those lines when it really, really, really matters.
Well, segueing off that, speaking of 5 rounds, I'm at a point where I would love to see this guy, and maybe this is the fan in me talking. I would love to see this guy in maybe a fight night main event or headlining, a fight night at the Apex or something like that, because he's at a point, he's gotten his skill set to a point where this man is a must watch for an MMA fan. I feel he is guaranteed violence. He has finished 3 of his last 4 opponents, all by knockout, all with just vicious stand-up technique, and it's great stuff. I think he deserves it. That being said, who do you guys think that he could possibly match up with next at light heavyweight? Omar, do you have any ideas?
I do. So there's a set of fights that I think would be interesting depending on who loses those fights. So the first one is more bullish than the other, if we're being honest, but I think the first one I had that's a little bit more, I think, reasonable would be the loser of Anthony Smith and Ryan Spann. That's going down in just a few weeks.
Let's go. Yeah, man.
I think that either one, I think, would be a good fight. Roundtree's never fought either one, or did he fight Spann?
Nope.
Neither one, right? Nope. The other one I had was a little bit more bullish, but I wanted to see him against the loser of Johnny Walker and Magomed Ankalaev. He has fought Johnny Walker before. He lost to Johnny Walker, if I remember that right, but that was like back in 2017, 2018, something like that. So it's been more than enough time for them to run it back, especially at this point where they're at the top of the division. So I think that'd be interesting to see who comes out of that alive.
Mark, by the way, it's worth noting this ties his own longest win streak of his career. He won his first 4 pro bouts, and it's the first time he's won 4 since then.
There you go.
So your thoughts of his next matchup?
In the same place, the first one that Omar said. I think that as far as the main event, I know he asked for it. I think he probably needs one more win for that, if I'm being honest. If he ever did get a Walker or an Ankalaev, maybe it could happen. I'm not sure he's getting that big of a fight yet. I think the more likely fight is the loser of Smith and Spann. It could even be the winner of Smith and Spann, conceivably, depending how the division shakes out above them. If they're left without a fight that makes sense, it could be Khalil. But I think one of those 2 guys would be a perfect next opponent.
Mark, staying with you, Chris Daukaus, this is the longest losing streak of his career. He has now lost 4 in a row, all by knockout, against the guys named Derek Lewis, Curtis Blades, Jairzinho Rosenstrike, and now Khalil Rountree Jr. What do you think could possibly be next for Chris Daukaus, imagining he's staying at 205?
Yeah, I don't love all the knockouts. I had said last week that I thought the loser of this fight would be a good next opponent for Kennedy Nzechukwu, who also just lost. But seeing all these knockouts, I actually think I'm going to pivot slightly and not put him across from Nzechukwu, who may knock him out cold again. I mean, he could beat Kennedy too, but I'm just saying run the risk. And I'm going to go with a wrestler instead who's ranked very similarly, and I will say Devin Clark to try to keep Chris Daukaus alive here.
Yeah, please. Omar, any other thoughts on that?
Just want to point out that is Mark's way of saying that Devin Clark has pillow hands. You guys give me shit.
No, bro, no.
No, he doesn't.
It's about
give me
Zichuku,
shit.
bro. It's that Zichuku is the
He
beast.
just is not a knockout artist like
beast.
Zichuku is.
Well, I don't think Devin Clark will knock him out. It'll be fine. He'll be all right. He'll be good. Actually, I was actually going to put him next to Tanner Boser. I'm not really sure where.
Two former heavyweights.
Yeah, I'm not really sure where he falls here. You know, I don't think he hasn't won a fight at light heavyweight, right?
Daukaus?
Yeah.
That was his first one.
His first one.
Right. So
So no.
So no.
I thought Tanner Boser
would have
did
been
a
fine.
Tanner Boser did a really good job, I thought, in his last performance. I really did enjoy it. So I think that'd be a good fight.
Like it. Okay. Let's move on. One more fight that we're going to recap, and then we're going to hop into the lightning round here. So, on the women's side of things, here we go. Iasmin Lucindo, in the women's strawweight division, Iasmin Lucindo defeats Polyana Viana by submission via arm triangle in round number 2, the official time, 3:42 of round 2. Omar, give us your take and your thoughts of this fight that Lucindo gets it done by submission.
Dog, tell me Lucindo doesn't have shades of these bomb-dropping women that we've seen in the UFC. Like, shades of the Amanda Cross, shades of the overhand of Cyborg and shit like that. Like, she cracks, man. She's a little tiny human being, but she cracks. And she had Polyana, like, wobbling for quite some time, a couple of times in that fight. And credit to her because, you know, she survived and she fought back. And I don't think there was a moment, especially the first right hand that she ate clean that, like, snapped her head around. I don't think she's ever been hit like that in her life. I don't think anybody's ever put paws on her to the point where her head went back and snapped all the way back through like if she was in a goddamn Tootsie Roll commercial. I don't think anybody has done that to her. And I think it caught her off guard, and I don't think she ever really recovered from it. She tried to take it down to the ground. We did have some good ground exchanges and things like that. But Lucindo's a beast, man, and she's really well-rounded. She's very, very young. I completely missed how young she really was. And she's got massive potential. I can't even express to you the ceiling I think that girl has just based on the skills that she's shown so far. And I think the more that she fights in there, the more she's going to get better, get more comfortable. And I think we have a real superstar coming out of Brazil at this point.
Mark, your thoughts?
I'll be honest. I'm not arguing it because it's fine with me that you had that take. I don't know that I saw all that. Round 1 was really closely matched to me, and this is Polyana Viana, who's 4-4 in the UFC to this point. Now she's 4-5. You know, they each had a nice takedown, but neither girl could do anything in the guard of the other girl. On the feet, it was actually Viana who was sharper in round 1, and then yes, they came out for round 2. Of course, Lucindo landed the huge right hand, as Omar said, spun Viana's head around. She gets the takedown shortly after, and for a second it looked like it was going to be more nothing on the ground. Like Tagnoni started warning them. The commentary's talking about a stand-up, and then you realize that Lucindo is slipping that leg through to move into mount, and as soon as it comes free, she locks up the arm triangle, swings her body out to the side, and it doesn't take long. So that was beautiful, and I'm not knocking her in any way. As I said, the right hand was beautiful. That was beautiful. So, you know, really nice job from her. We knew she could strike. Now we see the jiu-jitsu as well. I just don't know if I got all that from her having a competitive round with Polyana Viana and then beating her in the second round. But, you know, I'm encouraged. We'll see. Maybe I'll get there.
Quickly staying with you, Mark, because I want to get to our lightning round. Women's strawweight. Who do you see matching up with Lucindo next?
Yeah, I don't think we're flying up the ranks or anything here. She's only 21. I don't think there's any reason to be catapulting her. She's 2-1 in the UFC. I think we take another small step up. I will say Piera Rodriguez, who recently got her win streak snapped by Jillian Robertson, and I think the two of them could make an exciting fight. Both can hit hard. Both can grapple. I'll go there.
Omar's like, let's go with Jessica Andrade right now.
Oh, did she lose in the UFC? I thought. Oh shit. Oh right. Duh.
Yeah,
bro,
yeah.
I can't tell you how I don't feel like anybody lost that fight. So that doesn't even cross
against
my fucking
Hadagway?
head.
Yeah.
I just felt like everybody won that night. Everybody.
And then her win after that was Brogan Walker, who we're not even sure yet if she's going to hang in the UFC. We'll find that out, I guess.
This is true.
This
is true.
My point is just, I think another little step is apropos.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I can tell you something actually right now, and I probably should have mentioned it before fucking Mark went. There has been an update. Well, I have this fucking thing open twice. This doesn't help anybody. Hang on now. Pulling it from the sphere. So, shocker. Cynthia Calvillo is out of her fight with Elise Reed. And like the G that she is, Iasmin Lucindo is stepping in a month's notice. So she will be fighting Elise Reed at Noche UFC, September 16th.
I'm totally fine with that. Very
120-pound catch weight, FYI.
Damn.
So she doesn't have to cut all that weight again.
Damn.
Works for me.
Do you guys have anything to say about Polyana Viana, or you want to move on to the lightning round?
I want to know what the over-under is that Cynthia Calvillo gets cut again without even having had another fight. That's where I'm at with it. Because Jesus.
She hurt?
Didn't say. Just said she was out of her fight.
I'll throw a name just to close it out before we go to the lightning round. I'll say Diana Belbitsa for Viana. I feel like they are practically the same person. So let's see who's
Okay, our lightning round is when I challenge Mark and Omar to give us their quickest lightning takes of these fights. So no matchups, no future talk, just a quick one-sentence breakdown of this performance. Good stuff. Here we go.
So
Wait.
real quick,
God
the first two fights we're just gonna have Mark do it because your boy done fell asleep on the rewatch or in the watch in the first place.
Okay.
So we're gonna have Mark take the first two, and then I'm good. I got the rest.
Omar, let's do true lightning here. All right? We got a lot to get to. We can do
I'll
it.
do my best. I can do it.
Just channel like Around the Horn on ESPN. Just you can have like 10 seconds.
I don't watch that.
Not
shit.
10 seconds, but yeah,
Okay.
let's go.
Okay, catch weight 189.5 pounds. AJ Thompson gets it done over Tafa Nchukwi by UD. Mark.
Yeah, Chukwi's still a scary dude, even down at middleweight or at 189.5, which is all he could make it to. He's got some heavy, nasty kicks, but aside from having to eat a good amount of kicks, AJ Dobson did nearly everything else in this fight. Like Chukwi couldn't land in the boxing, Dobson did. He worked his own kick game. He got a few timely takedowns off of caught kicks, and he got it done. So he finally was able to show that potential that we've said we've seen in a couple of his early losses here.
Yeah, great stuff from Dobson. Another middleweight catch weight that was also 189. Josh Fremd gets the win over Jamie Pickett. Poor Jamie Pickett. Shutout on the scorecards. Every judge gave Fremd all 3 rounds. Mark.
Yeah, this was a pretty good showcase of the overall game of Josh Fremd, I would say. He can do a bit of everything. He was edging Pickett on the feet. He was able to control him in the clinch. Then you saw Pickett actually try to switch things up with the wrestling. But the problem was that once it hit the ground, it was actually Fremd who was the better grappler, so he kept reversing things. So not the most exciting win ever, but a solid all-around performance for Josh Fremd to get himself a W.
Okay, in the featured bout of the prelims now, in the bantamweight division, Marcus McGee gets the win over J.P. Bays by knockout in round number 1. Omar.
Yeah, this was some slick striking. Good performance from Marcus McGee. I love the slip. I love the counter shot. I love the timing off of it. Definitely one of those things you can watch back and over and try to learn from. It's a really good performance.
Nice. Mark.
Marcus McGee with the one-shot walk-off. What a job from him, man. He looked sharp. He was taking his time, setting little traps, getting his timing down, and it paid off because he stepped in with that little step-in right hand, and it just turned off base for a couple seconds there. And Herzog saw it, and he stopped it as he should have. I know it looked a little awkward, but he was out for a second, and Herzog caught it. So monster knockout for McGee.
Okay. In the lightweight division, T-Rex, Terrence McKinney jumps right back in the win column with a TKO victory over Mike Breeden in the very first round. Mark.
Happy to see it. He did exactly what he needed to do and then some in this fight. It helped that it seemed like Mike Breeden never really got going. I don't know. It just seemed like he wasn't ready to go. I don't know how else to say it, but I guess maybe it's just because Terrence McKinney put it on him right out of the gate. And that early push of McKinney has hurt him in the past. But thus far, he's been pretty ride or die with it anyway, and it was ride on this night. So he looked like a freaking buzzsaw, and he poured it on relentlessly until the ref had enough.
Omar.
Yeah, man. I think one of the things I noticed differently in this fight more than his last previous ones, win or loss, is his attention to the body now. He focused a lot of damage to the body, a lot of knees, a lot of punches and shovel hooks to the body, and I think it really paid a difference that he's not constantly headhunting, not constantly giving away where he's trying to go for all the time. I think his evolution is great. I think he's got a good team behind him with Kevin Holland and Jamal Hill. I love Terrence McKinney. I think he's a really fun fighter, really exciting, and he's got to come back soon.
Love it. I'm Team T-Rex all the way. Okay, in the featherweight division, Isaac Dulgarian defeats Francis Marshall by TKO, also in round number 1. A lot of really nice round 1 finishes on this fight night card. Omar, go first.
Yeah, dude. I'm a big fan of Francis Marshall, so it was rough to see the beating that he ended up taking towards the end there, moving to full mount, getting his face beat in, blood everywhere. Good performance from Dulgarian, but a rough showing for Francis Marshall.
Mark.
Yeah, you got to think that went like exactly according to plan for Isaac Dulgarian. Like it was as if how these guys talk in the little pre-fight interview that they show before the fights, where it's like, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna use my wrestling, take him down, land my elbows, and get him out of there. And like that's literally exactly what happened. Like he leaned on the wrestling. We heard about the credentials that he has there. And he was able to do whatever he wanted without much issue. So this was one hell of a debut for Dulgarian. He busted Marshall up in that fight, and statement to put himself on the scene here.
Okay, heavyweights. Martin Buday finishes Josh Parisian by submission via Kimura in the very first round. Mark.
That was the best Martin Buday we've seen by a mile. Now, Josh Parisian also may not be long for the UFC. It's possible that was the last time that we see him. But either way, that was a hell of a showing from Buday, or Buday, however he says, I forget.
Yeah.
But yeah, he pushed a crazy pace, which you don't always see from him. He was clean, but made it ugly at the same time, as contradictory as that sounds. He found angles to land. And then once it hit the mat, he just really aggressively pursued that Kimura and set it up perfectly and got it done. So a nice W for him to kind of show he's ready for a step that they've been holding off on.
Omar.
Yeah, one of my main takeaways was the fact that ending sequence wasn't even initiated by him. He didn't even go for the takedown. You know what I mean? That wasn't even part of the plan at that point. He was content to strike and kind of hold his own and clinch up, and throw shots from the inside and things like that. Parisian went for a double leg, and I'm sure he's kicking himself in the ass about it now because Buday was able to push him to the side and grab a hold of his ass and grab a hold of that arm and just work. So good on Buday, man. It really was the best performance that he's ever had in the octagon.
Okay, women's strawweight, Jacqueline Amorim defeats Montserrat Louise by TKO in round number 3. Omar, take it.
Yeah, it was, Ruiz is a tough woman, but she's lacking a lot of technique. There's a lot of things in there, a lot of moments in there where she's not responding the way somebody at this level should be responding, especially when it comes to the grappling and to the work on the ground. Her striking wasn't 100% great either, for that matter, but it's definitely a lot sharper, I think, than her ground game is. And it's not the first time that we've seen Ruiz not be 100% great in there at this point. But Jackie looked like a beast. Jackie, her ground game is fucking disgusting. And I think it took her a little bit longer than I expected her to take to finish this fight. And she didn't even necessarily win by submission, but she uses her jiu-jitsu to keep position and to keep that top control, I think, as much as possible, and to make sure she's not getting injured and in control. So by the time we got to the third round, she was able to kind of just get that control on top and just blast her until it was done. Can't ask for a better performance than that, honestly. Did you give her 10-8 rounds in the beginning?
Yeah. I think both, if I remember.
Both, right? Yeah. Just want to make sure.
Yeah.
It was a crazy performance from Jackie. It was a great one.
Yeah, this was the performance that matched the billing that she came into the UFC with. She fixed the cardio issues that she ran into after the first round in her debut, and now we were able to see everything that she was supposed to be. And holy hell, it was a grappling exhibition to remember. I mean, she was utterly dominant, probably back-to-back 10-8s, as we just said, and then the finish in the third. So she is now immediately a really interesting prospect in this 125-pound division.
Okay, bantamweight division, Damon Blackshear gets it done over Jose Johnson by submission via twister in round number 1. Amazing stuff. I think it's, the third twister in UFC history. Mark, go first.
Yeah, we've known this guy has talent, but he's another one who had his best showing thus far. Obviously in the finish, but I also mean in the fight as a whole. He came out aggressive. He brought it to Johnson standing. He took it down as soon as he saw his opportunity, and he completely outgrappled Johnson once there for the third ever twister in UFC history. And Johnson didn't look bad. You know, it'll be interesting to see him again. He looked like he had some things to offer on the feet, but this was Damon Blackshear's night.
Omar.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I thought the finish was absolutely amazing, especially to set somebody up for a twister. There's a few pieces that you need before that puzzle is complete, and guys don't usually stick around to let that happen. But Blackshear was slick about it, man. He was slick and he was quick about it and decisive about it. It was a great performance from Blackshear. And I should also mention really quick that he's actually got also a quick turnaround himself in Mario Batista. So Cody Garbrandt is out of that fight, as we've told you however long ago. And Damon Blackshear is now going to be turning around quickly and fighting this weekend against Mario Batista. So,
yep. Crazy.
Yeah, I've never trained Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu myself, but from what I have gleaned, I believe a twister, while it's a devastating submission, the opponent kind of has to not know what they're defending. Am I wrong?
It's yes and no.
To give you the arm unless you can take it.
Right.
The real problem is each individual piece of the twister doesn't necessarily seem dangerous, right? Because the one part, you're just kind of lacing the leg. People have laced legs before. It's not always going to be a red flag like, fuck, this is a twister. You're just lacing the leg.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, this guy is kind of like reaching behind you like he wants to give you a hug. Now, that to me is the immediate, don't let him do that shit. Like that, right. That's the red flag, is like when he wraps his arm around you, because all he's going to try to do then is reach to grab his own arm and then twist you and basically like try to snap you in half by rotating one side of your body essentially the other way, or at least keeping it positioned one way while you twist the upper body a different way.
Yeah, but he has to get his opponent's arm behind his head, which is the trickiest part.
I remember when
they gave it to him because he threw an elbow that, you know, and it landed on Blackshear, but Blackshear was just like, all right, thanks for the elbow. Now your arm is back here.
I remember when Korean Zombie got the first twister against Leonard Garcia, and Leonard Garcia gave him the arm. Leonard Garcia put his arm like around him.
Yeah. Bless Leonard Garcia's heart. He was never, you know, we knew what Leonard Garcia was there for. That man brought us mountains of entertainment, but like
he did.
The skilled he was not as much. Not as much.
Okay, let's bring this home. Okay, in the women's flyweight division, Luana Santos TKOs Juju Miller in the very first round. Omar.
Dog, I texted this to you guys earlier this week, but if the skill set and the execution and the talent of Juju Miller was equal or more than to the size of the dog inside of that woman, she could be champion tomorrow. Juju Miller is an absolute dog, but she takes way too many shots. She doesn't have answers for things. She really looks outclassed now in the last 2 UFC fights that she's had. And I think the only reason this fight lasted as long as it did is because she's such a dog, because she should have been knocked out after the first few strikes. Everything was landing clean. There was not a ton that wasn't landing directly on Juju Miller's face. She just was too tough for her own good. Credit to Herzog for stopping it when she did, because Juju never really went down. Like, she was up against the fence still throwing when Herzog pulled her off. So, you know, she's a beast, man. She's a dog, but something's got to be done about her actually being able to like fight. You know,
Mark.
Yeah, I mean, same take. Juju has what it takes mentally, but the skills just unfortunately don't match up at this point in time. We know there's some dangerous jits in her bag, but it's a matter of getting it there and of hanging on the feet until you can get it there. And as much as Miller tried to push a pace and use that to her advantage in this fight, as soon as Santos settled in, it went south. And Miller was just eating repeated fists to the face, and eventually it was enough. So good job from Santos to adjust to the heavy pressure in her debut and get a big finish, and still more work to do for Miller.
That does it, folks, for UFC Fight Night, Luque versus RDA. Going back to Hakeem Dawodu, I'm looking at his record again. You know he's undefeated in pro kickboxing? It's not a ton of fights.
I know he's had a crazy amount of fights, but I didn't know he was undefeated. That's crazy.
It looks like
it doesn't surprise me because he seems like a point fighter. He seems like somebody who's trying to win a match and not necessarily like finish a fight. You know.
Agree.
Yeah. Okay, let's put a what's the word? Let's put a bow on this one by finding out who rose and fell in Mark's rankings. Mark.
It is a very tiny little bow this week. Not much movement to speak of. A lot of guys moved like 1 or 2 spots. They were fighting guys similarly ranked to them and so on. So all we have is 1 riser and 2 fallers. I will start with the fallers. One is Tafon Nchukwi. Nchukwe, I forgot how he says that. He had moved down to middleweight. I installed him at number 50. At middleweight, loses. He is now down at number 57 in my middleweight rankings. And Montserrat Ruiz hadn't fought in a while. She was number 23 in my women's strawweight rankings. She now takes a tumble down to number 31. And then the riser on the other end of that fight is Jacqueline Amarine. She was number 39 in my women's strawweight rankings, and she now makes her way up to number 30, so a nice jump for her. And that's all we got this week.
Okay.
Let's keep it rolling.
That is short. That might have been the shortest rankings update we've had.
Could have been.
We're not done with the recapping, boys. Let's talk a little bit about this past weekend's Bellator 298. It went down at the Sanford Pentagon in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, headlined by Logan Storley and Brendan Ward.
Brennan.
Brennan, my bad. And Logan Storley gets it done by TKO. The official time, 4 minutes and 5 seconds of the second round. Great stuff from Storley, man. Mark, you want to start us off? Give us your take on the performance from Storley. Broke my heart.
Yeah, I'm going to start with Ward, actually, because he looked fantastic early. Like, I was amazed at how good he was looking early. He was snapping the jab. He clipped Storley with a nice right. He was stuffing takedowns and threatening with the guillotine. Like, it was all going right for him out of the gate. And once we hit, like, a couple minutes in, I was like, wow, is this about to be, like, a breakout Brennan Ward performance? But Storley, being the quality of wrestler that he is, he found a way to get that thing to the ground. He got stuffed on a takedown, spun like 360, spun out of it to end up on top of Brennan Ward after getting stuffed. And that is how he finally got to a spot where he could work the wrestling. And then from that point, he controlled Ward the rest of the round. He was heavy on top. He found one nice elbow, some smaller shots. I think it built his own confidence for what he was able to do if he could get it back to the mat again. Nothing huge in that round, but he was able to take round 1. But then round 2 came, and he had to push through some shit again, man, because Brennan Ward came out looking dangerous again. He was just peppering that jab. He was landing clean shots. I think that might be the fastest hands that we have ever seen from Brennan Ward, because he looked really dialed in. But then Storley gets another huge takedown, kind of a blast double. This time he has Ward against the fence, which was a game changer for him, because now Ward couldn't move on the bottom quite the way that he did in round 1. He was kind of able to crimp Ward's neck up, get him a little stuck, and he found an opportunity where he, as I said, he got Ward a little stuck, and he was able to open up with some consecutive shots and they weren't huge, but it really just put Ward in a place where like he had to focus on escaping so he didn't keep getting hit. And in trying to do that, he just stayed open because he was trying so hard to kind of get away. And to Storley's credit, he was like, fuck it, I'm just going to keep throwing a million shots right now. And I don't know if I loved the stoppage, as tough as Brennan Ward is, and as much as you could see he was trying to work back to his feet. Personally, I think I would have let it go on a bit longer, but I get the stoppage simply because of how many shots Storley was throwing. And I give him props for pushing it the way that he did to earn that stoppage. So well done by him.
Okay, Omar, what were your thoughts of Storley's win?
So I have a little bit of a different take about Brennan Ward in that fight. I found his performance to be a little annoying, personally. And I say that because he spent a lot of the early part of that fight where Mark is right. I thought his striking had good moments early on in the fight where he was catching him, he was landing, but he was backing up too much. Every time he was landing something, he was like fucking jumping back like he was in an anime. Like, where's the consistency? Where are you pushing forward? Because at some point, if you're worried about Storley's wrestling to the point where you don't think you can take him down, or you don't think you can keep him off you, or you don't think you can hang with him on the ground, to me, then there was no point in taking that fight. Storley is going to shoot on you. That is a 100% fact. There is no handicapper in the world that's going to make a bet that Logan Storley shoots 0 takedowns in a fight. It's not going to happen, right? So if you know this, you kind of have to adapt your style for it a little bit. And I can understand to a certain extent the jabbing and the crossing and then and stepping back so that you give yourself the distance so that Logan Storley can't shoot. That's all well and good. But then don't be mad that Storley isn't coming at you. Don't start talking shit in the middle of the cage that all of a sudden, why are you moving away? Why aren't you like, it was weird for me to see Brennan complaining when he was the one in the center of the octagon. It's very possible, but it annoyed me. Like it was one of those things that it seemed like he was annoyed that there was no forward pressure from Storley when Brennan Ward was consistently moving back while also controlling the center of the octagon. Or whatever the hell it is, a decagon, a fucking cage.
Circle.
Thank you.
Circle. The Bellator circle.
It's a tricky shape.
It's one or the other. They're always sides, no sides, corners, no corners, multiple corners.
Yeah. Hexagon,
I don't know.
decagon.
I don't know. But my point is I didn't care for it. And to be honest, even if there was no shit talking, the approach of consistently moving back, not cutting Logan off really to any extent, and kind of allowing Logan to sort of still be comfortable in certain positions, and giving him that much distance also allowed Storley to time and place his own power double. Like, this is not somebody who needs a body lock to take you down. Logan Storley will fucking fly across the octagon or the circle cage thing and tackle somebody. And it's exactly what he did in a lot of respects. There are moments in that fight where Brennan Ward got lifted off of his feet in a forward motion, or in a back motion, I guess, for him. But my point is the frustration that Brennan Ward found in that fight, even at the end of that fight where he was seemingly upset that he kept getting taken down and whatever, he did that to himself. I thought he had a lot of opportunities to put more on Logan Storley, to keep the pace, to keep the pressure on Logan Storley, and not rely so much on such a crazy management of distance in that fight. It wasn't my favorite performance from him, and I'm good on Logan Storley for adapting and eventually going where he needed to go to win that fight.
So this was for the interim welterweight belt?
What'd you say?
This is for the interim Bellator welterweight belt?
No, not for any belt, just a fight.
Oh, that's what Wikipedia says. That's why I was thrown off, because I don't remember a belt being wrapped around him.
No. What? Wikipedia says it was for a belt? It definitely was not for a belt.
Yeah, because he lost the belt too.
And why would there be an interim? Yaroslav Amosov is perfectly healthy.
That's why I was confused. Okay.
But yeah, it's interesting that you saw it that way. And where to me, I was not surprised by it. I was like, yeah, he's trying to stay out of range so he can't get grabbed, and he's trying to find his timing to lunge in with a 1-2 until he finds the one that turns Logan Storley off. I almost want to rewatch it now and see if I change my take after hearing your feel of it.
Yeah, it wasn't my favorite performance.
Interesting. I like it. All right.
Let's carry on. We're not matching these guys up, right?
Nah, we got too much to do. We got to run.
Too much. Come on. Too much, guys. Believe this one was for the interim heavyweight belt.
No, it wasn't.
It wasn't. God damn it.
Why do you keep saying this?
That's what I'm reading online.
Who did they give the belt to?
So I'm confused.
Where are you reading this?
Okay, heavyweight division. Valentin Moldavsky defeats tall Steve Mowry by unanimous decision. A shutout on the scorecards, 30-27 on all three. Omar, give us your take at this fight.
Yeah, I mean, I'd have to agree. I thought Moldavsky looked dominant in that fight. I thought it was, a well-fought fight, but I thought Moldavsky clearly won that fight all 3 rounds. I don't think it was, there's anything else you can really say about that performance and the rounds and the scoring and all that. I thought it was a clear 30-27.
Mark?
Moldavsky did it. I said it last week how he almost had to make a statement of his high-level legitimacy here, and he did just that. He won every round of this fight behind his wrestling. Really, the story of this fight was mat returns, because Steve Mowry actually did a pretty good job to work back to his feet again and again, and I give him credit for that. But the problem was he could never create an opportunity to do any damage once they were standing again, because Moldavsky was just absolutely undeterred and would just dive right in for another leg or a takedown or whatever and return him to the mat every time. And then by the third, Mowry was finally too drained to get up, and it was over. Moldavsky did pretty well the whole time on the ground to land strikes. Just a really strong wrestling exhibition for him in every single sense, and he hands Mowry his first loss.
Okay. You might say that he chopped tall Steve Mowry down to size. Sorry. You can't win them all. Okay, in the middleweight division, Aaron Jeffery defeats Dalton Rosta by UD 30-27, 29-28, and 29-28, winning the interim. No, I'm kidding. Mark, go first.
Got me. Yeah, I'm pissed at myself, man. I was into Aaron Jeffery. I took him to beat Salter, and then just the way Salter handled him, I kind of hopped off, and I wish I had not, because he looked good here. First round, it looked like we were going to be in for a really competitive fight. Rosta was pushing a pace. He looked strong. He was hanging in the striking with Jeffery, which was a question. He was even edging out the work in the clinch, I think. I gave that round to Rosta. I thought things looked like they were going pretty well for him. And then round 2, I don't know if he got tired or what, but he decided that he needed a single leg takedown at all costs. And he paid for it. Jeffery just continually stuffed it. He controlled the head. He sprawled to land some nice shots to the head, and Rosta just kind of sat there and kept hanging on to the leg. And then in round 3, he did more or less the same exact thing. Just completely baffling. I don't know if it was a cardio issue or just that he wasn't used to meeting the kind of resistance he was meeting from Jeffery, and he's not used to these big fights yet, and he couldn't figure out how to respond, and he was like, well, I can stay relatively safe with my fucking head down here. I don't know. But it was tough to watch if you were in Rosta's corner, because you had to be like, what are you doing right now? So, and I don't want to take anything away from Jeffery either, because it was great to see this from him after the way that Salter controlled him in the wrestling, to be able to nullify the wrestling the way he did here. So he scrapped that fight out, did damage any way he could, and earned himself a big win.
Omar?
Yeah, to be honest, it gave me vibes of Diego Sanchez versus BJ Penn from Infinite ago.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remember that fight. For some of our younger viewers, you may not even know what I am talking about. But in this fight, Diego Sanchez was fighting at this point for the lightweight championship of the world. And it was at a point where, again, if you've seen Diego Sanchez recently, I can understand your skepticism. But let's be clear, Diego Sanchez at one point was kind of a monster of his time. And at this point, he was fighting for the championship against BJ Penn. A lot of people thought that Diego Sanchez was going to win, could at least put on a great performance. He was like wrecking dudes to get to this point. Spends 5 rounds trying to shoot for a single leg. Rips his head open because BJ Penn threw a shin at his forehead. It's one of the bloodiest fights of that era.
It was.
And Diego Sanchez is probably one of his, at that point, I think by far was the worst performance he had inside of the octagon.
Yeah.
That's not to say that's what happened to Rosta, but it does scream bits of shades of those decisions in that fight. But it was good on Jeffery, man. I thought the first round was close enough that had you given it to Jeffery, I don't think I would have argued with you about
I
it.
agree. It was close for sure.
Yeah, but I think rounds 2 and 3 I thought were obviously clearly Jeffery's.
Okay, let's move on. James Gallagher gets the win by split decision over James Gonzalez. Omar?
Yeah, man, these are dog. Gallagher is a scrappy dude, and for that matter, so is Gonzalez. These boys came out to fight. I thought Gallagher had obviously more control, more positional control as well. I thought he was on top for quite some time throughout the entire fight, but also Gonzalez was still trying to make it interesting, still going for submission attempts, still trying to keep the fight alive and not necessarily just completely giving up position throughout that fight. But all in all, in the end, I thought Gallagher had a lot more, obviously, landed strikes, but also had more control overall. I thought that he definitely had banked 1 and 2 in my book. I thought once we got to 3, I think Gonzalez knew he was kind of shit out of luck if he didn't get something done. So he pushed the pace, he came out strong, and I thought he won round 3. But I thought Gallagher had already done too much by that point.
Mark?
God, I was more torn, man. This was another one of these fights that seemed to happen more often in Bellator somehow, where the debate of control versus effective striking really gets thrust into the spotlight because, yeah, Gonzalez definitely won round 3. Let's get that out of the way.
Yep.
He had a brilliant reversal into a takedown and then did some nice work from top to clearly win that round. But he still lost a 29-28 decision because James Gallagher spent basically the first 10 minutes of the fight on top of James Gonzalez. The issue is he really did nothing. Like, truly, truly nothing. He just kept burying his head and holding Gonzalez's arms and trying to kind of move his position. Like, the strikes were few and far between. He just laid there and controlled them. And Gonzalez, he didn't do a ton either, or else this wouldn't be a debate. But he did land strikes from bottom. He tried to be active. So, the question is, does somewhat active striking from bottom that's not doing any damage trump complete control? And it's a tough call. I get why people want to give it to Gonzalez. I think under my head I give it to Gallagher. Just 10 minutes on top is 10 minutes on top without anything super significant happening from Gonzalez. But, I get why it's a debate. I get why the decision went the way it did. And, I don't know if James Gallagher is going to be what he thinks he's going to be.
Same.
I don't know how else to say that.
Same.
Yeah, he certainly acts like he is a superstar.
Yeah.
And in some respects, he is. I'm sure in his community, at this point already, he's a big deal.
Yeah.
And that's no small thing, man. And he's probably making some nice coin at this point already. So, but I hear what you're saying as well. All right, last one. Sidney Outlaw. Unanimous decision over Islam Mamedov. I hate that one. I butcher it every time.
I think it's both.
It's just say both every time. Mamedov. Okay, Omar, go first.
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of the night at Bellator here, this also came down to the wrestling and to the grappling. The fact is Sidney Outlaw was just better. He was better overall. He was better throughout the entire fight. I thought his control was significantly better. And Mamedov had moments in that fight for sure. But I thought when you look at the fight as a whole, you can't tell me Sidney Outlaw didn't dominate that fight.
Yeah, this was wild, man. It's like Islam Mamedov just didn't show up. Like, the typical Dagestani wrestling was completely MIA. I don't know if it was related to that stiff jab that he ate in the first minute that bloodied him. Maybe it stung him and he never came back from it, or that Outlaw was just simply the significantly better wrestler, which I did not see coming. I mean, 10 takedowns for Outlaw to 0 for Mamedov, I don't think was on anyone's bingo card. But Outlaw took him down repeatedly. He controlled him. He really dictated the fight. And, that said a lot about Outlaw's grappling. And it was a needed bounce-back win for him, too. So, well done by him. And if you scored the Mamedov-Bendo fight last year for Mamedov, which he did lose it by split, but a lot of people had it for him. If you take that aside, that is Mamedov's first true loss since 2009. So really well done for Sidney Outlaw.
Yeah, man. Okay, that does it, I think. for our recaps for Bellator 298 in Sioux Falls. So well done, guys. That's all the recapping we have for y'all this week. Let us now jump inside the MMA sphere with Omar Artola, find out what's going on in the news and the headlines in the world of MMA.
All right. So we do have a couple of things to go through real quick. We'll start off with some quick stories, some little bit of a breakdown of the antitrust stuff that's going on with the UFC and the fighters. But we'll start here where Sean O'Malley recently competed in a grappling match with and went up against Takanori Gomi and was able to actually submit him via guillotine choke. So good for Sean O'Malley. That's no matter how you want to slice it, I don't give a shit about how old Takanori Gomi or anything is, but in a grappling, straight up grappling, I think it's a pretty good feather in his cap. So good for Sean O'Malley. Next on the list, McGregor went to the Anthony Joshua fight. Shout out to Anthony Joshua for winning via KO this past weekend. But he was asked about his return and if there were any updates. He basically did say and confirm that he will be fighting in December against Michael Chandler. He also did add that he wants to fight with Justin Gaethje following that, and then Nate Diaz after that. So that would be interesting to see if that actually comes to fruition.
The only trouble is that on a Conor McGregor timeline, that all would take about 10 years.
Well, hopefully once he gets going, he keeps that momentum. But you're right. He has not. I mean, to be fair, he did snap his leg in half. So
Yeah, when he's healthy, he generally goes.
yeah.
We just have been very unlucky in that department.
Lucky he's coming back at all, frankly.
Yeah.
All right, next on the list, we have Derek Lewis in the news. So there was a lot of speculation as to what was going to go on. Didn't really take very long to get this deal done, it seems. But Derek Lewis is re-signing with the UFC officially with a new 8-fight contract under his belt. So Derek Lewis seemingly probably going to play out the rest of his career in the UFC. No doubts about it.
Yeah, man.
Next on the list, Fedor Emelianenko, the last emperor, crawled out from under his rock, calls out Mike Tyson for a boxing match out of left field, says he wants to fight Mike Tyson as the co-main event for the Fury and Ngannou card on October 28th in Saudi Arabia. Mark, how do you feel about that?
First, it wasn't out of left field. He was on with Ariel, and Ariel was asking him about if he'd like to box, and he was like, "Yeah, I'd like to box." And then he said, "Who do you have a dream opponent? Who would it be?" And then he was like, "Well, it would be Mike Tyson." So I wouldn't say it was out of left field, but
That'd be crazy.
I don't want that to happen. So yeah, that's how I feel about it.
All right. So we do have some information here about some developments in the class action, or what is supposed to turn out to be a class action lawsuit against the UFC in the antitrust battle for better pay and greater free agency. There's a really good article by Michael McCann on Sportico that if you want deeper details, I definitely recommend you go and check it out and read it. But basically, the Kung Lee and 5 other former fighters, I think John Fitch is also involved in it. There's a couple of other fighters in there as well. But basically, their lawsuit has been granted a class certification. So basically getting the green light to become a class action, which effectively means that people within a certain, or fighters within a certain time frame, will now have the option of joining the class action lawsuit because they fall within a specific parameter. So that's what the class is. The certification is figuring out what that class is. So realistically, this is a really big step towards potentially winning a fight against a legal fight against the UFC. They're kind of talking a lot about legalese and what the UFC is in terms of the MMA space. They used the word, which I had never heard before, a monopsony instead of a monopoly. So a monopoly is the selling of good, like it's the selling of goods and services, and apparently I'm sorry. Yeah, is the selling of goods and services, and a monopsony is the buyer of services. So because the UFC fighters are technically independent contractors, they purchase the services of these fighters. So instead of being a monopoly, they are considered a monopsony. So there is the word of the day. But basically, this also happened in golf, which I was unaware of. I don't know if you guys were aware of this. But a lot of this apparently happened with golf in terms of antitrust lawsuits and kind of having the same monopsony argument because golfers are also considered independent contractors. They also don't have a union. When you look at, I think, the sports, when you juxtapose the sports together, you can kind of see how golf is also kind of like an independent sport, right? But you kind of have to rely on other golfers to kind of, if you want to have a union of sorts like some of the other sports have, you kind of have to have that tightness. And golf, just like fighting, I think is a very selfish sport where everybody's trying to go for the top gold. It's not a team sport, so you're not going to get, I don't think, as much camaraderie in that specific sense as you would in, MLB, NHL, and all that other shit. So, like I said, it's a really interesting topic. For those of you, again, who want to learn a little bit more about her, dive deeper into it, I won't do it here. But, again, the article can be found on Sportico, and it is by Michael McCann.
Nice.
All right. We have some fight announcements, and then we can move right along. So, right at the top here, I did not watch Tough. Did you see the finale? Is it tonight?
Dude,
Is it
I
yesterday?
missed the last 2 episodes. I'm fucking pissed at myself because we're about to preview these fights, and I didn't even see their last fights, but oh well.
Yeah. And, I feel like it was also like a spoiler, too, to a certain extent, right? Like knowing who's getting matched up and stuff like that.
Well, they only announced it after the show.
That's what I mean. And I didn't catch it. So I feel like I got it spoiled.
Yeah, sorry.
So, all right, so we're going to start here. So these fights that I'm going to announce right now are all going to be coming up for this weekend. There have been some additions and changes and things like that, announcements. So we're going to start with Brad Katona versus Cody Gibson. That's been added to this weekend's card. Austin Hubbard versus Kurt Hollabaugh. Cody Garbrandt, like I said, is out from this weekend, but we announced that a while ago. But again, Damon Blackshear, who recently had his win this past weekend, will be jumping right back into the mix against Mario Batista on August 19th. Jeff Neal is out against his fight with Ian Machado Gary. Neil Magny will be officially stepping in for Jeff Neal and will be fighting Ian Gary. That fight is going to be absolutely fantastic. I can't wait for that. All right, on to the next card here. We have Farid Basharat versus Clayton Rodriguez. That fight has been added to UFC's Paris card on September 2nd. Cynthia Calvillo is out, as we alluded to earlier. Iasmin Lucindo will be stepping in on short notice, again having won her this past weekend. She'll be stepping in to fight Elise Reed at Noche UFC. That is going down on September 16th. This will be a 120-pound catch weight, not at 115 pounds. It seems like they didn't want to, either Lucindo asked for it or they just didn't want to have her cut that much weight that quickly. But there that is. Next on the list, we have Raul Rosas Jr. He is back versus Terrence Mitchell. That fight has also been added to Noche UFC on September 16th. And with Chris Curtis out, seemingly with a separated rib, hashtag thanks Ian Gary, Anthony Hernandez will now be facing Roman Kopylov at Noche UFC on September 16th.
Wow. Okay. Wow. That's even harder for Hernandez, I feel.
I agree, but I'm ready for it. Hernandez has surprised at every turn, has not let anybody down in recent memory. He has all the momentum right now. So I'm always excited to see Fluffy go out there.
Yeah, man.
Sign me up.
So are these Basharat brothers, cousins?
Brothers.
So we have Javid Basharat. The other brother will be fighting Victor Henry. That fight will be going down at UFC's September 23rd event. We have Nate Maness versus Mateusz Mendonca. That fight has been added to UFC Vegas 80 on October 7th. I copy and pasted this.
Is it Maness? Isn't it like Maines?
Manus, I think it is.
Is it Manus?
Yeah.
Manus. And then we have Chris Gutierrez versus Montel Jackson. That fight has also been added to UFC Vegas 80 on October 7th. Hani Yahya back in the mix versus Alatangali. I've never gotten this man's name right.
Yeah, Alatang Haley, I think it is.
Antang Haley. That fight has been added to UFC's Vegas 81 card. That will be going down on October 14th. And then we have a crazy fight here. And Mark, I think I'm going to need you to make sure that this is the right person that I'm thinking of because the picture looked very, very on point. Bruno Silva versus Sharabutin Magomedov, added to UFC's 294 card on October 21st. Is that the Ginger Khabib?
Yes.
Yeah, Ginger Khabib. Let's fucking go. Jinyu Frey versus Victoria Dudakova has been added to UFC's 294 card on October 21st. I really enjoyed Dudakova's first fight, at least the last one that I remember, so I'm interested to see this one. And last on the list, we have Jordan Leavitt versus Chase Hooper. That fight has been added to UFC's Vegas 82 card on November 18th. And that is all we have this week.
That's all we got, baby.
Very nice.
Very nice. Thank you, Mr. Artola.
No, there were some good matchups in there.
Hell yeah, man.
I like that Victor Henry, Javid Bashrat one. That's money.
Yeah, it is.
I feel like Anthony Fluffy Hernandez is like top of the fucking list for MMA purists. He's like, this is the fucking guy to fucking watch and root for. He's so fucking good. Oh my God.
Yeah, he's awesome to watch. I love watching him.
Okay, preview time. This coming weekend, PFL 8, part of the 2023 playoffs for the PFL, and UFC 292 Sterling versus O'Malley. Let us begin with 4 of the bouts from PFL 8. Here we go. Going down this Friday, August 18th, which happens to be my wedding anniversary. Also, today is my parents' wedding anniversary. So, happy anniversary, Barb and Stu.
Very nice.
We said it in reverse.
Yeah. In reverse. Should I say it's Stu and Barb?
No, I said we said it in reverse. You said Barb and Stu, and I said Stu and Barb. Sometime.
So this Friday, August 18th, going down at the theater at Madison Square Garden in New York, New York, PFL 8. Here we go. Heavyweights and women's featherweight. Let us begin with... Where's this fight? Oh, here it is. I got it right here. This is going to be a hard one to say. Marina Moknatik. Fucking. Anybody? Say it.
Moknatkina.
Moknatkina. Those tricky Russians. Going up against Amber Liebrock. Pardon me if I say that wrong as well. Mognatina. Fuck it. Just fucking.
It's called Marina.
It's Marina. The 35-year-old out of St. Petersburg, Russia. She's 10-3 as a pro. 5 submissions on a 4-fight win streak coming into this Friday. Amber, her opponent, also 35, from Hayward, California. 7-5 as a pro with 5 knockouts. Coming off of a loss against Rosa Pacheco. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick.
All right, pretty wide odds here. Marina Moknatkina is minus 430 as the favorite. Amber Liebrock, forget, is plus 300 as the dog. This is really just the battle to see who is going to be food for Larissa Pacheco in the finals. Big size advantage for Amber. She's 6 inches taller. She has 6 inches of reach. She's here by virtue of one big knockout that earned her a bunch of points in the PFL format. Moknatkina is here because she's actually a pretty solid fighter. Her only loss in the PFL thus far is up at 155 to Kayla Harrison. And I think that she can just lean on her grappling all fight long here. There's no reason for her to mess around on the feet with Liebrock. I don't think she will have to because I don't think Amber can keep it there. And I will say that Marina Moknatkina controls most of this fight with her wrestling and wins AUD.
Omar?
I would have to agree as well, especially about the control on the ground and being able to kind of keep the fight where she wants. But I would be hesitant not to think that Moknatkina doesn't have the ability to stop Liebrock as well. She's a scrapper, man. She doesn't have a ton of power behind her. But she's definitely one to scrap and to strike. And I think if she gets enough volume, and especially if she gets it down to the ground and starts working her ground and pound, she has the ability to finish from the bottom, or from a grounded position. But I just think Lee Brock is going to be at a disadvantage here once it gets down to the ground. So I'm going to go with a TKO finish here, round 3 for Magnetina.
Okay. Here
Michael,
we
will
go.
you be making a selection?
I don't know these ladies well enough, but I will say I'll go with the Russian by submission.
For what it's worth, her minus 430 is by far the closest odds of these 4 semifinal fights.
That's
crazy.
crazy. That's crazy.
Yeah. A lot of wide fights here.
Okay, Denis Goltsov, the Russian Bogatyr, whatever that means, going up against Jordan Heiderman. Reminds me of Heidegger, the philosopher. Okay, Goltsov, the 33-year-old out of also St. Petersburg, Russia, riding a 4-fight professional win streak coming into this Friday. 25 of his 31 wins by finish, 15 of those knockouts. Jordan Heiderman, the 31-year-old out of Nebraska, undefeated, 7-0, 5 finishes. Omar, give us your take and your pick.
So real quick, Bogatyr apparently is it's a quote-unquote stock character in medieval East Slavic legends. So basically the way that we generally refer to like a knight, right? From like Old English or whatever the hell, that's their knight. In modern day Russian, it basically refers to a courageous hero, an athlete, or a physically strong man. But the origin seems to be from the use of a stock character in their Slavic knight tales, I guess.
Good research.
Thank you. All right. So I do think that the resume from Goltsov is just a little bit stronger. I trust him a little bit more when it comes to this fight. I think he's been in there with guys that are significantly better than Heiderman is, and there's no shade to Heiderman. I just think he's just a little on the newer side and hasn't really been exposed to this level just yet. So I do think that Goltsov is going to eat here, and I do think he finishes him here. I think I'm going to go with a round 1 KO.
Mark?
All right, so Goltsov is minus 775. Jordan Heiderman is plus 475. Goltsov's 2 inches taller. Heiderman actually has half an inch on the reach side. We saw Heiderman on Tough, if anyone watched that season, where he got one big TKO win and then got finished by Zach Pauga. He's solid. He certainly has some potential, but I absolutely agree. I do not expect that he is at a level to be beating a guy like Denis Goltsov. Goltsov is good. He's 9-2 in the PFL. His losses are to Ali Isaev, who's now in Bellator doing well, and to Ante Delia, who was last year's PFL champion. And I don't really think Heiderman brings much into the cage that can deter Goltsov. So he's a beast. I think he walks him down and puts him out. I will say round 1 knockout as well for Denis Goltsov.
I will third that and say Goltsov knockout. Okay, let's move on to the fight that we really want to talk about. Larissa Pacheco taking on Olena Kolesnik from Ukraine. Pacheco bursting onto the MMA stage at a global level by defeating Kayla Harrison last year. She is on a 8-fight professional win streak coming into this Friday, taking on the big Ukrainian, Olena Kolesnik, the Cannon, the 32-year-old, 9-5 and 1 no contest, 5 of her 9 wins coming by way of finish, back-to-back wins coming to this Friday. Mark, start us off. Give us your take.
So Larissa Pacheco is a very casual minus 1,000. Olena Kolesnik is plus 600. She is 3 inches taller than Larissa. Pacheco will have a 1-inch reach, though. Kolesnik did beat Aspen Ladd and Yoko Higashi to get here this season, where she now gets her 3rd shot at Pacheco after being finished the prior 2 times in a combined under 10 minutes. But hey, we saw what Pacheco did in her third shot against Kayla Harrison, so you never know. But I don't think we are going to see the same storyline play out here. Larissa Pacheco is better. She's a lot better. And it's going to take someone more than Elena Kolesnik, no offense to her, to beat Larissa Pacheco right now. I think we likely see more of the same. It's been 2 first-round finishes in their series so far, and I'm going to actually say we see a third one. I will go Larissa Pacheco, round 1 TKO.
Omar?
Yeah, I'm not really a big fan or confident in Elena's ability to stop strikes from hitting her in the face. And Larissa Pacheco is not the type of person where from the jump, you don't want to be giving up shots like that. And I think she will. I'm actually surprised it's at minus 1,000. I would have went -2 or even -2.5, to be honest. So I'm definitely going with Larissa Pacheco, and I think it's going to be a clean KO this time. Round 1.
Oh, baby. Oh, baby. I fucking love that pick. Let's go. Pacheco continues to roll. She's going to be dominant over the Ukrainian. I'm going to go round 1 knockout as well. Okay, let's go main event. Here we go. We have Renan Ferreira taking on Maurice Green, who has possibly the best silly nickname in all of combat sports. First, we'll talk about Renan Ferreira Problema, the 32-year-old out of Goiás, Brazil, 10-3 with 3 other it's 3 no contests. 9 of his 10 wins have come by way of finish. 8 of those knockouts. Maurice Green, the crochet boss, out of Evanston, Illinois, 11-8 as a pro. 9 of his 11 wins, finishes. 6 of those submissions. Looking to get back in the win column after losing back in June under the PFL banner. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of this PFL playoff main event.
So another pretty wide odds here. Renan Ferreira or Ferreira, I forget it. How does he say it? Renan Ferreira, I think. He is -750. Maurice Green is +475. Mo Green's a big man, as we know, and he is the smaller man here. 1 inch of height and 3 inches of reach on the side of Renan Ferreira. This was supposed to be Ferreira against Marcelo Nunes, but Nunes withdrew, and Maurice Green gets to step into the semifinals here. But it does feel somewhat fair, considering Maurice Green actually finished Nunes by TKO this season, but he just ended up finishing with a couple less points than him and therefore missed the playoffs, but he gets in after all. As far as the matchup, though, I like Mo Green, but I just think he's going to be outgunned here. I think Renan Ferreira is just a freak and a scary man, and that he's going to walk Green down. And I think to beat Ferreira, you either have to be a really strong striker as well, or you have to have wrestling in your pocket. And I just don't think Green's wrestling is good enough to swing this fight. So I think it's going to be the same deal as the other heavyweight fight. I think it's early pressure from Ferreira, and I'm going to say round 1 knockout here as well. Setting up a Goltsov-Ferreira final, which should actually be a solid one.
Yeah, I mean, I think this is a little bit of a mismatch. I like Maurice Green, I really do. I think he's a nice personality in the sport, especially on the PFL side of things. But I think that Ferreira is going to show that this is a mismatch, and I'll say that, I guess, in a polite enough way. I'll say Ferreira gets it done. I'm going to say he's going to get Maurice Green out of there, and I'll say it will be a round 2 TKO. Okay, let us.
Omar didn't pick.
Oh, my bad, Omar. Do your thing.
I feel like Maurice Green should be better than he is. He trains with such high-level people. He seems like he puts in the work. Like, I want to believe in him, but at every turn, I feel like it's not happening. I'm gonna do it one more time.
I knew you were.
Probably not the greatest decision.
Omar's gonna pick Maurice Green when we get to PFL.
Probably not the greatest decision. Admitting it now, but I just, it's just wild to me. Like, what the fuck? If you're training with John Jones, like, every day for weeks on end, like, how are you not better? How are you? There's no way. But there's no way, right? Like, he has to be getting better. So I'm going to go with that notion that he just has to be getting better.
You know,
so
I
I'm going to
heard,
go with Maurice Green.
Okay.
Unanimous decision.
How? UD for Maurice Green, the crochet boss. You got it. You know, you're making me think of this this bit I heard from Colin Cowherd once. I used to fuck with Colin Cowherd. Where he talked about like how guys who are that level of like elite, who are just like so much better and just like so good, sometimes it's tough to learn from them. I think he was talking about Jordan, and he was talking about like Tom Brady, and using these guys as examples, and like LeBron James, and why like sometimes these kinds of guys will try their hand in like coaching, like when Larry Bird coached the Pacers briefly, et cetera, et cetera. And it's like, he's like, why can't these guys like be great like me? Not that they coach like that, but This was like Colin Cowherd's like take on this kind of stuff. And you're making me think of that, like Maurice Green training with John Jones. Like, John Jones is just dynamic. He's just fucking electric. I don't know. Maybe it's that kind of dynamic. Like, maybe it's, what do you have to learn from John Jones? He's like, just do what I do. Like, he's just fucking be amazing.
But it's more than that. At least in my experience, whenever I train with somebody that's better than me, that knows more than me, that is more responsive than me in a lot of different situations, like, I pick up on that stuff, right? Those are things that I learned. Those are looks and feels that I'm not used to, that I'm now exposed to. So now I know that they're there, and now I know that they're real and they exist, and I need to focus on them. And so they just become something that I begin to practice and add to my repertoire. And that's literally what I spend time doing. Like, when I'm training, I'm generally trying to train with people who are better, or who will at least point out flaws in what I do so that I can focus on them and get better. A lot of the reason why I record myself as well is so that I can see myself doing things, because when I feel them, a lot of times things that I'm doing wrong don't necessarily feel like they're wrong, because I feel like I'm doing them right. And a lot of times that's not the case. And I just feel like Maurice Green, in a position where he's fighting and training with a lot of these elite guys, like, I don't expect John Jones to be giving him like one-on-ones, but like, if you're sparring John Jones, or if you're wrestling John Jones, like, if you're not getting better at all, then I don't even know why you're doing it, because it can't be fun. Like, at some point, it sounds like you're going to get your ass beat if you're not learning anything, right? But in my head, if you can stop John Jones's 2 takedowns, 3 takedowns in a practice match, how can I not believe that you'd be able to stop somebody else's takedowns who's far less talented and skilled than John Jones? So that's that's really what I feel like my mind is going to, and what I feel like should be happening with Maurice Green. But it is, as we're sitting talking about it, it might just be that Maurice Green doesn't learn the same way as other people do, or maybe at very minimum the way that I do, or think that I do. So there might be something to say about that, but I'm still going to keep the faith. I'm still going to stick with Green.
Yeah, I mean, it's a kind of a mediocre take, I guess. I mean, look, we meet weekly, and we bring our opinions and our takes. A guy like Colin Cowherd has to talk for like 5 hours a day, every day, and like generate takes.
I get the take more with Cowherd's take, though, because I don't want to go down a huge rabbit hole, but
That's okay.
In those sports, it's a coach who is coaching, and he is maybe not, in like the Bird example, he had so much that just came innate to him, like his understanding of the game, and it could be hard for him to be like, why aren't these guys getting this? In the MMA example, Bones is literally rolling with and sparring with Maurice Green. It's not, he's still in his prime. Larry Bird is a retired older man. I'm sure he could scrimmage with them, but it's not the same thing as actually rolling with a John Jones. So I think the point somewhat applies, but not fully applies in the same way.
Sure. You guys ready? Talk about this pay-per-view?
Let's do it.
I am. Let's do it.
Okay. UFC 292, Sterling versus O'Malley, going down this Saturday night at the TD Garden in Boston, Massachusetts, USA. Here we go. We are going to talk about every fight on this card, so there's no need for me to ask you two gentlemen to spotlight any other fights or fighters, because we're going to touch on all of them. So here we go. Let's start with the opening bout. in the women's flyweight division between Marina Moroz and Karine Silva. Marina Moroz, the Iron Lady, the 31-year-old out of Ukraine, 11-4 with 6 submissions on her record, looking to hop back in the win column after losing by decision to Jennifer Maia back in November. She will be facing off against the younger prospect, Karine Killer Silva, the 29-year-old out of Brazil, 16-4 as a professional. All of her 16 wins have come by way of finish, 9 knockouts and 7 submissions. She won on Contender Series and is 2-0 thus far in the UFC. Of course, all finishes here, all submissions. Mark, start us off. Give us your take and your pick of Moroz versus Silva.
All right, so yeah, I love this fight already. I love this whole card. I'm very into the two Silva fights that we have here back to back. So yeah, this one, Karine Silva is the favorite. She is -150. Marina Moroz is +125. So pretty close odds on this one. 2 inches of height on the side of Marina. The reach is the same. Interestingly enough, these two have actually fought before. They met back in 2014, and Marina Moroz won by armbar in the first round. And that's actually the fight that landed her in the UFC. She had her first UFC fight in 2015 and has been here since. She's fought 10 times in the organization, whereas Karine Silva took the complete opposite road. She went 10 more fights outside of the UFC just to get a look on Dana White's Contender Series. But she won by sub there, and she is now 2-0 in the UFC proper with 2 first-round subs. And they meet again. So this is a really good matchup. Marina Moroz, I think, is a girl who is continually underrated. Like, she just beat Mayra Bueno Silva, like, a few fights ago, and I feel like no one really gives her the credit for being as high level as she is. Her grappling is just as good now as it was when she subbed Silva the first time they fought. But the difference to me is that first fight was barely a year into Karine Silva's pro career, and I think she's going to be the girl who has made more significant improvement. And just eye test to me, as much as Moroz is a nasty grappler, I actually feel like Silva looks like the slicker grappler. So I don't know if she can tap Moroz out. That's a big ask, but I think she can be the one who is able to maintain a bit more control here. So I will say Karine Silva wins a UD.
Omar?
Get ready for this nonsense right here. Karine Silva.
That's a hell of a way to start off your take.
Karine Silva, I really enjoy watching her, but there's something.
Fights off.
No. Just how crazy this pick is going to be in my take and
that's
all
right.
of this
Yeah,
stuff.
that's right.
So you're absolutely right about obviously them having fought the first time years ago, 2014, essentially like a decade ago. Not really too much I feel like you're going to want to take away from that going into this fight, I think, at this point. But what I think is interesting is if you look at the record of Karine Silva, she didn't really start hitting submissions until Marina Moroz tapped her out. And so what it makes you wonder is, did Marina Moroz unlock who we now know as Karine Silva? Is it possible that made her find her way to jiu-jitsu at an elite level and start choking bitches out and submitting like everywhere? Like, there are submissions all over her page after the Marina Moroz fight. So I wouldn't be surprised at this point if her jits is better than Marina Moroz. So I'm going to go with the bullish pick here. Round 2, submission, armbar, Karine Silva. Let's go.
That's not that crazy of a pick.
It's a little
his
crazy.
logic, the unlocking deal that he ran through.
Hitting her with a submission and, to get her back for the armbar loss that she had then. It's a little wild. A little out there.
Say the odds again.
Tight. -150 Silva, +125 Moroz.
Oh.
Dude, my heart will always go out for Marina Moroz. Dude, when she beat Maria Agapova back in March of 2022, it was only like a month or so after Russia invaded Ukraine. And then like here's Marina Moroz on a pay-per-view card, and she gets the fucking win, and she's a fucking warrior. And I remember when Bruce Buffer announced her, whatever city she's from in Ukraine, he's like, from blah 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 Ukraine, and the crowd just fucking swelled. I got chills, bro. And then she won with a finish, and then she, of course, because she won, they interview her, and like I feel like it was just a different air in the arena. You know, you could tell it's coming through the screen as I was watching this. And of course, like I think at first she like talked about the fight a little bit. She talked about like who she had to thank maybe. And then finally she was like, I want to, you know, shout out whoever she said shout out. She was like, my mom is still in Ukraine. And she starts to get emotional. And bro, I remember getting fucking emotional. It's like my family is still in my home country that's being bombed and invaded right now by a much bigger country. And this has nothing to do with my pick. But I'm just calling back to that moment, man. That was quite a moment in fucking history. That being said, I'm going to take Karine Silva. God damn it. I wish I could take Marina Moroz, but I just like Silva in this matchup. It's a little bit of a case of the irresistible force against the unmovable object, because Karine Silva has won all of her fights by finish, and the Iron Lady out of Ukraine has never been finished. That being said, I think this is going to be a great fight. I think the odds reflect that, but I think Silva's going to land the harder shots, and I think she's going to have her hand raised. I think it's going to. I'll split the difference, and I'll say that Karine Silva will get her first UD victory over Marina Moroz. But God bless you, Marina Moroz. All right, another women's bout here in the flyweight division. Andrea Lee taking on Natalia Silva. Andrea Lee, KGB, the 34-year-old out of Louisiana, USA. She's 13-7 as a pro with 8 finishes, 5 of them submission victories, looking to get back in the win column after back-to-back losses against Viviane Araújo and Macy Barber back in March, which was a split decision loss, but even still, a loss nonetheless. Natalia Silva, the 26-year-old out of Brazil, 15-5 with 1 draw, 12 finishes, 7 of those submissions. She's riding, I believe, a 9 or 10 fight win streak, having not counted them, but quite a win streak heading into the UFC. Now 3-0 under the UFC banner. She's a beast. Omar, would you like to go first?
Sure. I'm honestly having more trouble figuring out how this fight ends, not so much who ends the fight. Natalia Silva, I think, is an absolute beast. Her combos are sharp. The weight she puts behind her punches and her strikes in general are fantastic. I think her ground game is absolutely elite. But KGB's a tough out when it comes to finishing. She's not easily finished by any stretch of the imagination. She guts out a lot of the nonsense she gets put into. Submitting her is not something that happens, I think, almost ever. So I have a real trouble finding exactly how Silva's going to win this fight, because, you know, she murders just about everybody they put in front of her, give or take. And as much as I do see her finding an opportunity to finish Andrea Lee, I don't think that it'll fully go through. And I think Andrea Lee will be able to keep herself in the fight for the full 3 rounds. But I think she gets her ass completely handed to her. So I'm going to go with Natalia Silva by unanimous decision. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a 10-8 round somewhere in the course of that fight.
Yeah, I'll get my easy pick out of the way. This is an easy one for me. I'm also going to take Natalia Silva. I think she's going to keep rolling, and Andrea Lee is going to keep stumbling. This seems like a mismatch to me. I think the odds probably are going to be far apart. And I think that Natalia Silva hands Andrea Lee her first knockout loss. Give me a club and sub in round 1.
Wow.
Mark?
Wow. That'd be fucking big.
I'd be surprised if any of these lines are over 1,000. I think they're all under 1,000, but
probably we're not talking that big. Natalia Silva is minus 360.
Oh, okay.
Andrea Lee's plus 280. 2 inches of height and 4.5 inches of reach for Andrea Lee. So as high as I am on Natalia Silva, that reach for Lee really does give me some pause because she is always game and will always put hands on you. Like, even when you beat Andrea Lee clearly, you still eat punches to your face. So you factor in that reach, and maybe it's not going to be an easy night for Natalia Silva, but I am all the way in on her. I'm in on both of these up-and-coming 125-pound Silvas here that are on this card. But Natalia's been crazy impressive. I just think as this fight goes on, the speed and the power for Silva will start to make a difference. Her hand speed is ludicrous. She's super well-rounded, and I think she'll take this. And I agree. I think maybe she'll hurt Lee late, but not get her out of there, and I will say it's a UD.
Okay, let's go on now to the middleweight division. Where are we here? Okay, Andre Petroski taking on Gerald Meerschaert. Here we go. Petroski, the 32-year-old out of Springfield, Pennsylvania, 9-1 as a pro with 8 finishes, 4 knockouts, and 4 submissions, riding a 4-fight win streak coming into this Saturday night, undefeated under the UFC banner at 4-0. 3 out of those 4 being finishes. Most recently getting a decision win over Wellington Turman back in last November. His opponent, kind of on the opposite end of the professional experience spectrum, Gerald GM3 Meerschaert, the 35-year-old out of Wisconsin, 35 wins and 16 victories. So 51 total fights in his career. 27 of those are submission victories. He has more submission victories than many guys have total fights. Looking to get back in the win column after a TKO loss against Joe Pyfer. So here we go. Mark, go first. Give us your pick and your take of Petroski versus Meerschaert.
So the odds are a little wider than I anticipated. Petroski is minus 240 as the favorite. Meerschaert is plus 190 as the underdog. He is 1 inch taller. He has a 4.5-inch reach advantage, he being Meerschaert. And I think this fight is really interesting because Petroski is going to look to wrestle. That is what he does. But if he's going to do that, he's going to need to deal with Gerald Meerschaert's grappling the whole time that he's trying to work down there. And Meerschaert has made a career of tapping dudes on the rise at middleweight and turning them back. Trevin Giles, Mahmoud Muradov, Bruno Silva, just to name a few. You know, this is what he does. But at the same time, Petroski has navigated grapplers like Nick Maximov and then Wellington Turman in his last 2 fights. So there's I'm sure in his mind he thinks there's no reason that he can't do the same here. And I myself am really torn on whether he can or not. I feel like it's either going to be a Petroski UD or a Meerschaert sub. Petroski's never been tapped, though. His only career loss is via strikes to Bellator's Aaron Jeffery, who we were just talking about earlier. His own jiu-jitsu seems to be improving every fight, so I think I'm going to trust Petroski barely and say he wins a 29-28 UD.
Omar?
Yeah, I'm not going to rehash that because that's kind of the same route that I went down. And I kind of also landed on Andre Petroski being a wrestler who's actually pretty adept at jiu-jitsu as well. And I do think the combination of the two, considering the threats that Meerschaert brings to a fight, I think it's going to be enough to keep him safe while also still allowing him to score points, striking on top and stuff like that, and having control. If there's one thing that Meerschaert can do in a fight like this is stay on the bottom too long looking for something, and then by the time you realize it, you've lost the whole round. So I definitely see that being a possibility in this fight. So I'm going to go with Petroski as well by unanimous decision.
Yeah, I agree. I think that this is going to work out to be perhaps a tough stylistic matchup for Gerald Meerschaert. Meerschaert's a funny guy because he had such a prolific record for his age. I mean, he has the record of a guy who's should be 44 years old and still fighting. The guy's 51 pro bouts in MMA. And what's funny is that Petrosky and Mearshart are not that far apart in age, but Petrosky has 10 total pro bouts, and Mearshart has 51. That being said, I like Petrosky in this matchup. I think he's going to be the better striker. I think he has just enough grappling skill to sort of negate Mearshart's strong suit here, and I'll go UD for Petrosky. We're unanimous for Petrosky. Let's hope we're right.
We've been unanimous winner-wise on all three so far.
Oh, we have. Oh,
See
wow.
who gives us our first curveball.
Okay, we have in the bantamweight division, Brad Katona taking on Cody Gibson. Both of these guys returning to the UFC. So Brad Superman Katona, the 31-year-old out of Winnipeg, Canada, 12-2 as a pro, 4 finishes, 3 of them submissions, riding a 4-fight win streak. His ticket back into the UFC after going, I believe, 2-2 under the UFC banner a few years ago. Cody Gibson, his opponent, the Renegade, the 35-year-old out of California, USA, 19-8 as a pro with 7 knockouts. Also returning to the UFC, I believe also 2-2, or maybe 3-1 rather, under the UFC banner. A bit of a longer road back to the UFC, but back to the UFC he is. Both of these guys making their sort of second debut under the UFC banner. Omar, take this one first. Give us your take and your pick.
Yeah, man. The season of The Ultimate Fighter has been relatively decent. Some good fights here and there. There have also been some not as great fights. But I would say this season is probably better fight, more better. No, that's not English. There have been more better. The fights have been good, with the exception of a few. Just gonna go down that direction. Brad Katona has been in a few fights that have been really enjoyable to watch. I can't remember who they are off the top of my head now. I wish I had them written down, but they do have him. No, that was the last time he was in The Ultimate Fighter, not the most recent one. Anyway, Brad Katona is a really strong dude. He's positionally very, very good. His striking and his distance management is also pretty damn good. Sounds like he's been working in SBG Ireland for the longest time now. Obviously Conor McGregor, Greg Kavanaugh, and kind of that whole bunch there. So, I have a lot of faith in him. I thought he was good even when he was in his original UFC run. I thought he got a bad. I thought he ran into some opposition that I don't think he should have been cut for personally. He lost to Rob Duashvili, which is gonna fucking happen, and then he lost to somebody named Hunter Azure, which I guess is probably what got him. Well, definitely what got him the boot, but I guess from a name perspective, losing to somebody, I think with no real value to them probably didn't look great in their eyes. So. I think this is his time to shine, though. Cody Gibson is a hell of a fighter, definitely a beast, and definitely one of these gamer type guys where they like to come forward a lot. I just think out of the two of them, Cody Gibson and Brad Katona, I think both have similar amounts of experience as far as like having been in there with the really good guys and things like that. But I think while Cody Gibson, I think, has had more fights, if I'm not mistaken, a lot more fights. I think that Brad Katona is the more technical fighter. I think Cody Gibson has found a style that works for him that I'm sure he can employ. But I think Brad Katona is a little bit more technical. So I'm going to go with Katona here by unanimous decision.
All right. The odds for the tough bantamweight finale are Brad Katona minus 180 and Cody Gibson plus 145. To get here, I'll just tell you really quick since Omar was trying to think of it. Cody Gibson beat Mando Gutierrez, and then he beat Rico DeShulo. So he beat 2 of the, prospects, if you will call them, on the show. No UFC vets were on his path. Brad Katona beat a prospect in Carlos Vera, but then in the semifinals, he had to beat Timur Valiev, which is a very legit win. 4 inches of height and 6.5 inches of reach on the Cody Gibson side here. So that is definitely a factor. It's a tough one to call. Brad Katona is as solid as can be. Other than that Merab loss, he's only got the one other loss that Omar mentioned. And despite being smaller in there and not being what you'd consider a terribly dangerous finisher, to put it a little lightly, He just has a knack for staying safe and controlling fights and winning rounds. He knows how to win scorecards. And Cody Gibson is going to be a really fun test because he's the much bigger guy. He's dynamic. He can finish fights with strikes or sub you. Basically, he's everything that Brad Katona isn't, and Brad Katona is everything that Cody isn't. So we're going to see who can implement their style more successfully here. I'm interested to see it. I like them both. I'm glad they're both getting a shot here, and my guess is that even the loser will probably get another fight in the UFC after this one. Katona is favored. I think he probably should be. I really debated going Gibson just from the size and finishing ability, but it just feels like Katona's going to Katona him, I think. So I will say it's a UD for Brad Katona.
Tell me the odds again.
Well, minus 180 Katona, plus 145 Gibson.
So a favorite. It's not exactly close, but it's not exactly super far apart. It's a tough one for me to pick, man. I hear what you're saying about Katona-ing people. Fuck it. I'm going to make a field pick on this one, guys. I'm going to say Cody Gibson makes it a bit of a war. Both these guys are going to be fighting their asses off because it's the finale. I'm going to say Cody Gibson. Fuck it. I'm going to say he catches him in a submission, and he gets it. He gives Katona his first submission loss. His first finish loss.
I debated it.
Yikes.
I did.
Give me round 3 submission for Cody Gibson. Bad pick. Okay, Austin Hubbard taking on Kurt Hollabaugh in the lightweight division. Austin Hubbard, his nickname is Thud, out of Denver, Colorado. 15-6. He's 31 years old. 7 finishes on his record. Back-to-back wins coming into this weekend. Also making his return to the UFC. And another returner on tough, Kurt Hollabaugh, the 36-year-old out of Denham Springs, Louisiana, USA. 19-7 and 1 no contest. 16 of his 19 wins have come as a finish. 9 of them are submission victories, 7 knockouts. Also back-to-back wins under the XFC banner, which I ring announced the last 2 events for XFC, and Kurt Hollabaugh was supposed to be the next headliner for XFC. So I ring announced XFC 45 and 46, and he headlined 43 and 44, and he was going to headline 47. And at XFC 46, he came into the cage and faced off with what was going to be his opponent. And then COVID happened, and XFC folded like a fucking house of cards. God damn it. Hey, but that shit was on Fox. That was fucking cool.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Okay, Mark, go first.
All right, very similar odds here to the other finale. This being the lightweight finale. Austin Hubbard is favored. He's minus 175. Kurt Hollabaugh is plus 145 as the underdog. Who they beat to get here. Hollabaugh beat someone from the Prospects in Lee Hammond, and then he finished Jason Knight in the semifinal, which is pretty legit. Austin Hubbard beat a prospect in Aaron McKenzie, and then he won a close split decision over Roosevelt Roberts in the semifinal. So also a good win for him to get here. There will be 1 inch of 1 inch of height and 2 inches of reach for Hollabaugh. They're both tough dudes. Hollabaugh is, I think, more of the finisher, but I think I'm going to end up trusting the wrestling of Austin Hubbard here. Hollabaugh has struggled with wrestlers before. Andre Harrison, Frodo Hasbulaev, Thiago Moises, just to name a few. And I think Hubbard can likely turn to that again here if he needs to edge these rounds out. And he could even be winning on the feet. He throws nice straight shots. Hollabaugh's a little more wild, but I could see Hollabaugh being the one landing harder and Hubbard just deciding to go to the wrestling. And it won't be easy there. Hollabaugh's active. You know, if he's on his back, he'll be trying to create something there, but I think we get the more boring result here. I'm actually picking that in both finales, I'm just realizing. But I think that Austin Hubbard can just lean on the wrestling, kind of grind this one out, and ensure that he is going to be the lightweight tough champion. UD.
Omar?
Yeah, I also have more, excuse me, more confidence in Austin Hubbard. I think at this point, I just think he's the better fighter. Kurt Holloway has shown a lot of improvement, I think, since he's been out of the UFC. But I just think Austin Hubbard is probably just a better fighter overall. So I'm also going to go with Austin Hubbard here, just by UD.
Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention, the XFC is back.
Oh, really?
They just put on their first event in a couple years, and I believe they're under new ownership or new management or something like that. So good for them. They just did an event in Detroit. I was not the ring announcer. I need to try to reach out to somebody and make that happen. But they probably have somebody. And, yeah, good for them.
Nice.
That being said, yeah, I agree with you guys. I think Austin Hubbard at this point is the better fighter. And I think it could be a great fight, though. I think Kurt Holloway, he fought his ass off on Tough. He's that kind of guy, though. He's like a blood and guts kind of guy.
I was just going to say, he always does. Yeah.
Dude, when I met him in Grand Rapids, he's an intense dude. Like he's a mean guy. And I mean that in the best way possible, like in the fighter sense.
Yeah.
Like, thank God this guy found martial arts. You know what I'm saying? I remember Ray Longo saying that about Chris Weidman. Like, it's a good thing this kid found martial arts because, like, yeah, he's a bad dude. Although now Chris Weidman seems like such a sweetheart.
Yeah, he does.
That being said, I'm going to take Austin Hubbard over my former fellow XFC compadre here. I'm going to say he gets it done on the scorecards. UD for Austin Hubbard, tough champ. Way to go. Okay, let's get further up this card here. In the middleweight division, Gregory Rodriguez taking on Dennis Tululin. So Gregory RoboCop Rodriguez, the 31-year-old out of Brazil, 13-5 as a pro, 8 knockouts, 3 subs, looking to get back to the win column after getting knocked out with, I believe, a straight, like a jab or something by Bruno Ferreira in the first round back in January. His opponent, Dennis Tululin, the 35-year-old out of Moscow, Russia, 10-7 in 1-0 contest is his record. 9 of his 10 victories have come by way of knockout. He is also looking to get back in the win column after getting subbed by Junyoung Park back in February. Omar, go first. Give us your take and your pick.
So it's a good fight. I'm having a hard time picking this one, to be honest. These guys, I think, are very similar in their approaches to the fight. Just kind of juggernauts that are going to come through and try to crack until somebody gets laid out. I think it's just a matter of who do you think wins the coin flip. I'm going to go with Gregory Rodriguez. Going to go with Hobocop just because that's my boy. So I'm going to go with Hobocop here. I'm going to give Tululin his second KO loss here, first round for Hobocop.
I'll go next. I also like Rodriguez here. I liked him against Bruno Ferreira, to be honest. I thought he just kind of got caught, but I think that he is a rising middleweight, and I envision him getting right back on track here against a very tough guy in Dennis Tululin. That being said, I think he's going to finish Tululin. I'm going to say he stuns him, and he gets him out of there with a flurry. I'll say TKO round 2 for Hobocop. Mark?
Yeah, he's favored. He's minus 375. Tululin is plus 275 as the dog. 2 inches of height for Rodriguez, but 2 inches of reach for Tululin. And to me, this might be the only fight on this card where I actually feel like one side of it, the fighter is just clearly better. And I think that's Hobocop. I think, but for people that don't know, we know his name is RoboCop and not Hobocop, but he's Brazilian, so we say Hobocop. I think that he has the grappling advantage, certainly, if he ever would go that route. I know he doesn't love to. But even on the feet, I just think he's stronger and the much harder hitter. And Tululin will throw down in there, which usually plays right into Hobocop's wheelhouse when people are willing to do that. So I'm going to go with Rodriguez by some type of finish. I almost want to say sub in case he ever actually did grapple, since it seems like the easier path here. But I think the more likely result is that we see some type of firefight type exchange, and Gregory Rodriguez wins it by TKO. I will say round 2.
Okay. Let's move on to the also middleweight division between Chris Weidman and Brad Tavares. Is it Tavares? Did he say Tavares or Tavares?
I think he says Tavares.
Tavares, okay. Chris Weidman, the All-American. What's that?
Omar's falling asleep, literally in front of our face.
I'm literally fading, but we're gonna push through it.
Dude, stand up or something. Stand up. Walk around. Do a push-up.
Omar, do you...
Should I just go shadow box?
Stand up right now and shadow box. No. Do you want to set these fights up? Would that help kind of like wake you up if you do some more talking?
I have no idea.
I think you should try it. I think that would work. Can you just give yourself a good smack in the face? That'll help you.
Dude, we'll just yell at him when it's his turn. Set him up, like, come on.
Okay. Chris Weidman, the All-American, the 39-year-old out of Baldwin, New York, 15-6 as a pro with 10 finishes, making his long-anticipated return after breaking his shin bone, was a tib-fib fracture against Uriah Hall back in April of 2021. I think probably the third leg break of its kind that I can recall in the UFC.
Why am I blanking on who the first one was?
Anderson, Connor, and Weidman.
There were more before that.
Yeah, wasn't there one before Anderson?
Yeah, there was a dude coming out of Tough. I forget his name now, but he was the first one to like go viral for snapping his leg in half.
Yeah, I feel like there was someone.
It's crazy that's not like a super uncommon injury to happen, and that's so gruesome.
I hate it. I don't even want to talk about it anymore.
And what sucks about Weidman's is that it was the very first thing that happened in the fight.
Yeah.
I think it's the first strike he threw. I don't think Uriah had even attempted to throw a strike at that point. It was 17 seconds into the fight. Terrible.
Bro, and he said the bone popped out of the back.
But Chris Weidman, being the fucking warrior that he is, he said, "This is not the end. I will rehab and I will come back." And that is what he has done. And now, this Saturday, he will face off against Brad Tavares, who is the 35-year-old out of Hawaii, which is going through some shit right now. 19-8 as a pro. 7 finishes, 5 of them knockouts. Looking very much to get back in the win column after back-to-back losses against DDP and Bruno Silva back in April. Omar, wake up and go first. Give us your take and your pick.
Chris Weidman is an interesting character. Like we talk about guys who have their careers have kind of gone in a different direction from where they were at and the trajectory they were going on. And at one point, Chris Weidman was like at the height of the middleweight division, right? The first guy to knock out Anderson Silva, the first guy to frankly beat Anderson Silva in the UFC, did it twice. Started being the guy that we expected to beat the legends, of the Brazilian era. And then he ran into Luke Rockhold, and Luke Rockhold like ruined his whole life. And he has not been the same since he threw that spinning back kick and missed and got taken down to the ground and got punched out. His record has suffered significantly since then. Basically every one of his losses obviously has been in the UFC. And I think what concerns me more than anything are his performances, because apart from the leg injury, when it comes to the way he fights, he doesn't like to get hit, and he doesn't respond well to getting hit hard and getting hit cleanly. And that probably sounds really fucking dumb. Like, who does respond well to it? But
some guys do.
But there are guys who don't really let it phase them, right? Chris Weidman has a really bad habit sometimes of like wincing, closing his eyes, doing a lot of extra things in there as a result of the shot itself. And obviously fear is involved and things like that. But I think for him, especially once you start getting to the higher elite levels here, that stuff plays. especially to strikers. No way Adesanya doesn't look at that and just think it's pure dessert for when he strikes, right? Like guys just biting and eating and doing all kinds of extra movements they don't need to be doing that you can time and take advantage of. I just don't know if Brad Tavares is at that level. And I think that's why I like this fight so much, because it does give Chris Weidman a chance to kind of show a good accounting of himself and to see where he's at, how his recovery has gone. Is he better than what he was before? Is he the same? Is he worse? And I think Brad Tavares is a perfect litmus test for it. I'm going to stick with Chris Weidman. I think I'm probably going to be on that boat until the wheels fall off, even though we're like riding a car on like one wheel at this point. But I'm going to stick with Weidman until the end. So I'm going to go with Weidman here by submission round 3.
Mark.
So Weidman is a plus 215 underdog. Brad Tavares is minus 275. 1 inch of height and 4 inches of reach on the Chris Weidman side of things. And look, I will tell you what this is right off the bat. There is no chance in the world that I pick against the man Chris Weidman as he makes his return from this type of injury. I'm not even putting a Chris Weidman loss out there in the world. So my pick is Chris Weidman. I will tell you that the striking of Brad Tavares is absolutely something that could give problems to this older version of Weidman. I will also tell you that Tavares' absurd balance on one leg and also balance against the cage could play a big factor in keeping him upright in this fight. But again, I am doing all I can do to put good vibes out there into the world for Weidman, so I'm going to say that he finds a takedown, has an easier time than you would think controlling Brad Tavares on the mat, and ends up choking him out. Chris Weidman, round 1, submission.
Damn.
Man,
Hey,
I wish
if we're fucking going for it, we might as well just go for it.
You're right. You're right. I will make a somewhat more conservative pick. I think he better, goddammit, use his wrestling in this fucking fight. I'm going to say that he does. And I'm going to say that he's going to manufacture a win. I want Chris Weidman to get a fucking win. So I think he's going to utilize his wrestling. I don't see him finding a choke or anything like that. I think Brad Tavares is well-rounded enough to stay away from that. But I think that Weidman wins convincingly enough on the cards, walks away with a UD either 30-27 or 29-28. All 3 cards. Let's go, Team America. Come on. Even though Brad Tavares is also American.
America.
Okay, boys.
Yeah.
Things are getting spicy.
World, yeah.
Things are getting crunchy here on this pay-per-view card. In the bantamweight division, Marlon Chito Vera taking on Pedro the Young Punisher Munoz. Chito Vera, the 30-year-old out of Ecuador, 20-8 with 1 draw, 16 finishes, 8 knockouts, and 8 submissions. Looking to get back in the win column after losing a split decision to Corey Sandhagen back in March. Pedro Munoz, the Young Punisher, the 36-year-old out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, 20-7 with 2 no contests, 13 finishes on his record, 8 of those submission wins. Won his last fight against Chris Gutierrez back in April. Omar, would you like to begin?
Sure. Why not? I actually find this fight really fun. I enjoy Chito Marlon Vera. I enjoy Pedro Munoz. I just think Pedro Munoz is in a really shitty position. He hasn't won a ton of fights recently. He won his last fight against Chris Gutierrez, which was one of those fights where, like, if you didn't win against him, like, what are we doing? So he was at least able to kind of answer the question that I'm not done yet, but at the same time, what more should I be expecting at this point from him in his career? And I think, the opposite of that with Chito Marlon Vera is I kind of expect the world now from Chito Marlon Vera, or Marlon Vera, because he's been doing so well. His momentum is great. I think the evolution of him as a fighter has been, like, apparent across his career. And I think he's finally gotten to a place now where, even though if you watch him in his fights, he may not always be winning the fight, but he seems to find avenues to victory one way or the other. I think he's going to be able to do that here against Pedro Munoz. I think it's going to be a tough fight. I think it's actually, based on all the other fights he's had, it's probably going to be the toughest fight that he's going to have. And I think one of the reasons is because Pedro Munoz is a little bit of a tank when it comes to absorbing damage and taking and still kind of coming forward on top of taking shots. And it's very possible that Marlon Vera becomes a little too tentative. He has a bad habit of almost starting slow and waiting and not necessarily taking control of the fight the way that I think he can and should. But I'm going to go Marlon Vera here. I think it will be, again, a close fight, but I think he scrapes by 2 rounds to at least 1. So I'm going to go with unanimous decision.
I'll go next. I think that this has the makings to be a sneaky, tough fight for Marlon Vera for exactly that reason, because he's a bit of a slow starter. Although it's not even like Marlon Vera is like a slow starter and then becomes like a faster guy. He just kind of he plods forward. I mean, he's incredible. He's a I love that word you used earlier, Omar, in the program here. He's a programmer. Programmer? You said programming? When we're talking about the Khalil Rountree fight.
Yeah. He programmed that sequence for sure, and that reaction, yeah.
But like I said, I think this has the makings for a tricky stylistic fight for Vera, because Pedro Munoz is not someone to sleep on here. And you know what I'm going to do, guys? You know what I'm going to do? I wonder what the odds are. I'm going to take Pedro Munoz. I think Pedro Munoz gets out of here with a decision victory over Marlon Vera. And Marlon Vera is going to be like, golly.
Probably going to be a little bit more aggressive than that.
The odds are that Marlon Vera is minus 200 as the favorite. Pedro Munoz is plus 165. 2 inches of height and 5.5 inches of reach for Marlon Chito Vera. And I think I'm going to lean on that size advantage to help me make my decision in this one, because I think it's very close. I'm a little surprised the odds are even that wide. Pedro Munoz is really good, and as we always say, the man will rip your calf to shreds with kicks, so Chito is going to have to be prepared for that. And Chito, as we have discussed plenty of times, is frustrating as all hell with the way that he chooses to approach fights. And in his last fight with Corey Sandhagen, we saw the worst possible example of that in terms of his inactivity. Granted, Munoz is not Sandhagen, so he shouldn't be quite as tricky of a puzzle. But I'm still very tentative to pick a guy who we have seen be as inactive in the cage at times as we've seen from Chito. But it's that size advantage that I think is going to let me do it. 2 inches of height, 5.5 inches of reach. Chito always feels like a big bantamweight. And I think those advantages, plus a potential desire to close kicking range, will maybe make Chito more active in this fight. I don't see why he wouldn't be willing to lean on that reach and look to put hands on Pedro Munoz. And I'm going to trust that he will do that. If he doesn't do that, I don't even know when I will feel safe enough to pick Vera in a fight again. But I will go Vera. Munoz is crazy durable, though. So I will say 29-28 UD for Chito.
Okay, bantamweights again. Damon Blackshear against Mario Bautista. Blackshear, the Monster is the nickname. 29 years old, out of North Carolina. 14-5 as a pro. Coming off back-to-back wins. Most recently against Jose Johnson back in August. Mario Bautista, the 30-year-old out of Phoenix, Arizona, 12-2 as a pro with 6 subs on his record, riding a 4-fight win streak coming into this weekend. Omar, please go first. What's so funny?
That I look like I'm fucking dying over here.
That's why you go first.
Yeah, I like Blackshear here, man. I thought he made a really good accounting of himself in his last fight against Jose Johnson. Obviously, submitting somebody with a twister in this day and age is still rare bear, so you don't see it very often here. And I think Blackshear's ground game, I think, is pretty damn legit. Mario Bautista, though, is not a slouch. He has finished a lot of guys in the UFC at this point, regardless of their records or their credentials or whatever. Like, he's still racking up finishes in the UFC. So it's definitely going to be a good fight. I think if I had to guess and really make a pick here, I think I'm going to stick with Blackshear here. And I do think that one of these guys is coming away with a submission victory, but I'm going to go with Blackshear here. Second round submission.
I agree. I think the odds are going to be close, but I like Blackshear here. I mean, I loved his last two performances, especially against over Lacerda and Johnson. Both finishes, most recently with a twister, by the way. So let's keep going with Damon Blackshear. I think he gets it done. I'll say UD for Blackshear. Mark?
The odds may be wider than you think. Mario Bautista is minus 225. Damon Blackshear is plus 185 as the underdog. Blackshear is 1 inch taller. He does have a 3-inch reach advantage. Turns around on 1 week notice, which is pretty wild. But he gets himself a pretty tough puzzle to solve here in Mario Bautista because he is just so well-rounded, man. He'll hurt you on the feet to all levels. He's a pit bull in the wrestling. He's got slick grappling. And Blackshear's no slouch in any of those departments either. I get you guys going with him, but I just think Bautista may be a bit higher level everywhere. I've been really impressed with him thus far in the UFC. He had earned the step up that he was getting in Cody Garbrandt. Unfortunately, he loses that step up now, but I think he still gets himself a nice win on pay-per-view and hopefully positions himself for a big fight in his next one. I will say Mario Bautista by decision.
Okay, moving on now to the welterweights. Good God, it is late. Neil Magny taking on Ian the Future Gary. Neil, the Haitian sensation Magny, the 36-year-old out of Brooklyn, 28-10 as a pro. Most recently defeated Phil Rowe by split decision very recently, back in June. And he is stepping up to face Ian Gary, whose opponent, I'm blanking for a second. Jeff Neal. Pulled out due to injury?
Yep.
Or unknown?
Yeah, some type of injury, he said, right?
Some type of injury?
No, so according to Ian Gary was like, when you break a hand or you break a rib like Curtis did, you ask other people what happened, they're all going to tell you that Chris Curtis broke a rib. Apparently, Ian Gary has gotten like 4 different answers as to what has happened to Jeff Neal. And he even apparently told his wife weeks ago that he didn't think Jeff Neal was going to show up to the fight.
Yeah, he's been saying that.
So it sounds like...
But we haven't heard the actual answer how to get out of Neal's camp?
Nope.
That would have been such a good fight.
Yeah,
Something tells me it's not a good reason. Just not.
Let's not pretend like a guy like...
Yeah, I don't think that at all. I'm sure he's got something.
Is like afraid to fight somebody.
Jeff Neal's a beast.
I wouldn't necessarily say afraid, but it doesn't sound like something's like... It doesn't sound like something needs surgery. Like, Ian Gary was not amused with because Ian Gary supposedly knows, or at least what was told from Hunter in a phone call that, he put on the internet, that viral video that went out of him receiving the phone call. But they bleeped out what it was. And Ian Gary was not impressed. So.
Okay. All right. Well, Ian Gary, he's 25 years old. He's fighting out of Dublin, Ireland. He is undefeated, 12-0. 8 of those 12 wins, finishes 7 of them knockouts. Most recently knocking out or TKOing D-Rod, Daniel Rodriguez, back in May. Mark, go first this time.
I was trying to look on Twitter to see what I saw. I don't see anything. All right. Odds are wide. Ian Gary is starting to get his respect. He is minus 500. Neil Magny is plus 370.
Wow, disrespect.
Same height here, but 6 inches of reach for Neil Magny. So he'll be back to having his usual reach advantage that he missed in his last fight against Phil Rowe. And Magny's a great test. Obviously we've said this plenty of times. He really is a great gatekeeper to the welterweight top 10. He can strike. He can make it ugly. He can wrestle. He can tap you. He's a well-rounded guy that a lot of up-and-coming welterweights have not been able to figure out. But I think Ian Gary will do just that, and I think he is going to do it in style. I think Ian Gary's game is evolving another level up with each matchup as he has ascended up this welterweight division. I really feel like he's one of these guys that got to the UFC at the exact right time, and that his progression of opponent thus far has matched up perfectly with his own progression of skill. And I think we see another display from Ian Gary here. Plus, Magny taking this on short notice is not easy to prepare for a guy who moves the way Ian Gary does and sets traps the way that he does. So I think Gary shines. I think he freezes Neil Magny a couple times with a couple beautiful shots, and then I think he puts Neil Magny down to make a big statement. I am going to say it is a round 2 knockout for Ian Gary.
I totally agree with just about everything you said in that take. Neil Magny is a nice matchup. Both of these guys probably are not used to fighting guys who are their exact height, and they're both listed at 6'3". So that could present interesting dynamics in this fight in both directions. That being said, I think it's more so for Magny because he could and maybe will rely on a bit more grappling or attempting to get the fight there. But I think he'll be like, this guy is a bit bigger than I'm used to going up against at 170. I think Ian Gary is going to resist the takedown. And I think on the feet, he is going to continue to shine against Neil Magny, who is good everywhere, but perhaps not great on the feet as much as Gary is. I'll say, I'll follow suit with Mark, and I'll say round 2 knockout or TKO for the future, Ian Gary. Omar,
you're up, bud. Stay awake.
I like Ian Gary here, man. Ian Gary is... It's very difficult, I think, for me right now to pick against Ian Gary. I love the personality. I love the style. I love the approach to the game. I love how technical he is in the octagon. And, Neil Magny is really good everywhere. I don't think he's great or I would even say elite in any one specific area. I'd probably argue that his jiu-jitsu is probably the best aspect of his game compared to everything else that he has, but I think everything is pretty solid. There's just nothing extra about it, right? It's almost like the fundamentals that they're at their sharpest to a certain extent. Ian Gary's got more tools in the box. He's just so good at using them, so good at knowing when to bring them out. His kicks come right underneath, right from the right past the elbow, right into the body. Like the way he snaps his kicks is really, really nice. I'm gonna go with Ian Gary here, man. And honestly, I think he can stop Neil Magny. I think he hits him to a body shot that just puts him down. I'm gonna go with a second round Ian Gary body kick,
wow.
TKO.
We all picked second round finish. That's interesting.
Funny. Okay, co-main event time, gentlemen. We have for the women's strawweight championship, Weili Zhang taking on Amanda Lemos. So Weili Zhang, Magnum, the 34-year-old out of China, 23-3 with 19 finishes, 11 of them knockouts. Most recently defeating Carla Esparza. That was for the belt, the one against Esparza? Yeah, she took it from Esparza, right?
Yes, correct.
Back last November. This is her first title defense then against Amanda Lemos. Amandinha is her nickname, the 36-year-old out of Brazil. 13-2 as a pro with 1 draw. 8 wins by knockout. Coming off back-to-back wins against Michelle Waterson Gomez and Marina Rodriguez, most recently back in November. Omar, go first.
Another solid fight, man. I like Lemos, but I just think Weili is just so sharp in there, so technical, and I think she has a real comfort in her distance management as well as her ground game and being able to take things down to the ground and work from the bottom, or work from the top, I should say, on bottom. So I think Weili's going to have a little bit more success. I think it probably gets more difficult for Lemos to get things off the more that this fight goes on. I think Lemos is going to be the most dangerous in round 1. And I think that's when she really has her puncher's chance to potentially put Weili out in the middle of a crazy exchange. But if it doesn't happen in round 1, I don't really see Weili Zhang being able to be run over by Lemos or even caught by Lemos, really. I just think she's a little too technical. So I'm going to go with Weili Zhang here. I'm going to go with the unanimous decision on this one.
For Weili?
For Weili. Mm-hmm.
Dude, I think that Weili continues to roll here and continues to shine in her career. I think she is on another level. I think Amanda Lemos, for the division, for the strawweight division, she is one of the hardest hitters. But in terms of technique, I think she's going to be outmatched by Weili Zhang. And I say that Weili Zhang shines in her first title defense back with the belt and gets Amanda Lemos out of there. I will say she finishes her, I'll say round 2. With strikes, TKO.
Strikes. Okay, she is a bit more than a 3-1 favorite. She is minus 320, that being Weili, the champ. Amanda Lemos is plus 250 as the underdog. The heights are the same here. The challenger will have a 2-inch reach advantage. Look, Amanda Lemos is dangerous as hell. She's a beast for sure, and the power is real, but I am just not sold on her as a championship-level fighter. I never have been. So I'll have to eat my words if she pulls this off, but to me, everything favors Weili. I mean, think about the way we saw Weili exchange with girls like Joanna. I think her technique is at a higher level than Lemos is on the feet. I also think her power is a big factor here, since we saw the way that Lemos had to kind of dial back that march him down style the one other time she fought a knockout threat, which was when she fought Jessica Andrade. And Weili is certainly that as well. And then I think the grappling could potentially be a big check in the corner of Weili here as well. I think she can drag Lemos down. I think she can control her. And really, I just think she can control this fight. And maybe the biggest point of all, which I didn't even think of, is that as long as Weili gets through the first 10 or 15 minutes, I trust her cardio in rounds 4 and 5 way more than I trust Lemos's cardio. So even if she did happen to somehow be down 2-1, I think she probably still gets those last 2 rounds if that's what it has to come down to. But I'm going to say we see a late submission from Weili Zhang. I will say round 4, rear naked choke.
Okay. All right, boys. Main event time, and then it's bedtime for Daddy.
I can't wait. I have to be up so early tomorrow, way earlier than usual after our show. This is miserable.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll make this fast. The Funk Master, Aljamain Sterling, defending his bantamweight title again, this time against Sugar Sean O'Malley. So Sterling is the 34-year-old out of Cortland, Long Island, New York, 23-3 as a pro, 8 subs on his record. A stupid win streak. I believe it is the longest win streak in bantamweight history right now. Most recently defending the belt against Henry Cejudo back in May. Sean O'Malley, the 28-year-old out of Helena, Montana, 16-1 with 1 no contest, 11 knockouts. Most recently defeating Petr Yan by split decision back in October. Mark, first, give us your take and your pick, but first give us those odds.
Aljo, minus 250. Sean O'Malley, plus 200. 4 inches of height for O'Malley, as we know he is the taller man. 1 inch of reach for him as well. Sean O'Malley's really good. His timing is otherworldly. His ability to land shots is second to none. He is longer. He will find openings on the feet for as long as they're on the feet. And he does have solid grappling defense from what we've seen thus far. Like, look at the way he was able to get up against Petr Yan. But, with all that said, I just think the size, the strength, and the truly elite level of wrestling and grappling of Aljamain Sterling may be too much. And it really is interesting because whenever Aljo does have to reset on the feet, I think he has a harder time dealing with what O'Malley brings than with what a Yan or a Cejudo brought necessarily, just because of the way O'Malley can set things up and how sharp his timing is. But with that said, it has to be all boxing from O'Malley because knees and kicks feel like way too much of a risk in this particular matchup when he has to do all he can to keep Aljo from grabbing a hold of him. So he's going to be a bit limited there, and I just think Aljo's grappling is that elite that he can make it so that none of this matters. I think he can take O'Malley down more than once if that's what it takes. And I think his control is just abnormal, to put it bluntly. Like, I could see him beat O'Malley up a bit on the ground, either from, like, mount or back mount or some situation where, like, an arm is trapped for O'Malley, something like that, and then just eventually wrap up a choke and get him out of there. So I am going to say round 2 rear naked choke for Aljamain Sterling to retain. I won't be shocked if O'Malley pulls something off. To be clear, I really won't. But I am rolling with Aljo. Round 2 sub.
I'll go next. I agree. I think this could be a very close fight, and I would love. Don't get me wrong. I would love it for. I would love for that to happen. Both of these guys are winners. Let's get that straight. I think they both have only lost once or twice each. So that comes down to a stylistic matchup then. Like the styles, I think O'Malley's in trouble, to be honest. Would I be surprised if he pulls off some magical knockout? Not really. But I have to go with the smart pick here. Aljamain Sterling by submission via rear naked choke or something like that. Or a UD by control. But for my official pick, I'll say submission round 3 for Sterling and Still.
Omar, you made it to the end.
Omar, you made it, buddy.
Yes, sir. I think this is a terrible matchup for O'Malley. I think O'Malley obviously has, that sniper kind of style to him.
He does.
But if you've ever played Call of Duty, really hard to shoot people directly in front of you and on top of you with the sniper rifle. Like, it doesn't happen very often. It doesn't happen very well. So this is kind of the same thing, man. I think the distance management is not really going to be in Sean O'Malley's favor because I think at any point, Aljamain doesn't really stay in one place very long. The dude is kind of all over the place. He cuts angles a ton, probably way more than a lot of people in the UFC do as a whole. And I think his striking is criminally underrated. I think him not throwing power shots or the type of cracking shots that will knock somebody out. I think the reason, or I think him not doing that is one of the reasons why I think his striking is underrated. But the reality is his striking sets up a lot of the way that his fights work out for himself, whether it is landing a strike that works or whether it's setting up a takedown. I think the constant movement and the constant volume is what always has people uncomfortable in there against him. On top of the fact that it sounds like when he gets on top of you, he sounds like one of the strongest people that's on top of you. And the weight sounds like it's a problem as well. So, I think Aljamain just has more tools to utilize in this. I think his ground game is just too elite to not go to it and not take advantage of it. I wouldn't be surprised if Sean O'Malley has literally been drilling, getting his back taken and just surviving for forever, just to make sure that he's comfortable in that position, because I have a feeling that's where Aljamain is going to want to live, is just on O'Malley's back, body triangle set up, and just constantly swimming, punching, and looking for rear naked chokes. So I'm going to go to Aljamain Sterling here. I don't know if he gets Sean O'Malley out of there. I think he should, based on his pedigree, but O'Malley's a tough dude, man. And I definitely don't want to take anything away from him. But I'm going to go with Aljamain Sterling here. I think I'm going to go round 4 submission.
Okay. Well, boys, we have done it again.
I'm going to bed.
A long one and a late one, but a good one. I liked this episode a lot.
Who did all the fucking talking to make this thing be 3 hours?
Dude, I don't know, but I'm going to tell you right now, I don't remember half of the shit I just said in this episode.
I know you don't, dude. And you didn't hear a fuck that we said in any of these previews. Sorry, you'll get to listen to the show fresh when it's out.
It'll be great.
Since we actually listen to it, unlike someone on this show.
Yikes.
All right, boys.
Shots fired. Shots fired.
Okay.
All right.
Let's
get
the
Let's
fuck
get
out of here. Yeah, man. Enjoyed the fights this weekend. PFL action and UFC pay-per-view 292. That being said, we will catch you guys next week.
Love y'all. Click the like button. Leave a comment. Peace.
Peace.